Vengeance and Venom, Book 1, written by Keary and performed by Jesse Elwin. A note to readers. Vengeance and Venom features spicier content, more explicit language, and darker themes than Keary books of the past. Trigger warnings include blood, gore, human trafficking, mention of sexual assault, not between main characters, death of parents and siblings, not on page, mentions of murder, kidnapping of adults. Chapter 1. It's been a week since I learned that vampires exist. As I walk through the party, I see more evidence here. They're not being obvious. There isn't blood cascading down any throats. I don't see fangs flashing in the neon lights. But if you pay attention, the tells are there. That man's lips are locked on that woman's throat. They look like they're in the throes of a passionate prelude to a wild romp in the bedroom. But she's sitting stark still. Her eyes aren't closed. They stare at the wall vacantly. There is a woman who has a man pushed up against the wall. She's flirting with him, but her eyes are fixed on his neck, watching his pulse. The man looks nervous, but even though he's pushing against her, trying to make his way out of there, she doesn't falter even one step back. Because she's stronger than him, even though he has at least 4 inches of height on her and like 40 pounds. But the biggest giveaway is when I watch as a man guides a woman by the wrist to the far back corner. She giggles as he pulls her in close, and one tiny yelp of surprise escapes her throat when his eyes flash brilliant blood red. I barely catch it as his canines elongate and he goes in for her neck. Her body tenses for a moment, but just 2 seconds later she relaxes, and she stands there, still, docile. I've lived in New York City my entire life, all 24 years, and until last week, I would have told you that the city was inhabited by people, pigeons, and rats. But that's not true anymore. What else exists out there? Are all the fairy tales and nightmares true? I'm not sure I want to know. Unease seeps into my skin as I walk into the crowd, scanning faces. At first glance, I'm not sure how you tell a regular person from someone who sucks blood. They all look the same to me, until they're ready to feed. I'm in danger. Every nerve in my body is screaming it. They're stronger than me, and every inch of them, once they're zeroed in on a target, screams predator. I don't know how it works. Once you're bitten by a vampire, are you dead? I don't think so, because that woman looks woozy and not in a drunk way. Will she also turn into a vampire soon? Will she be under the vampire's thrall? I don't know how the hell this all works. I just need to keep any fangs away from my neck tonight. My eyes scan the crowd, searching for auburn hair, pale skin, and fiery green eyes. This your first red party? My eyes slide over to a man sitting at the bar. He's dressed in a dark red suit. His shirt is night black, and the top 4 buttons are undone. He scans me with intense blue eyes. Golden hair flops onto his forehead. No, I answer. I rarely miss them, he says. He stands, and I realize how tall he is. He takes a step forward, and he towers over me. The predatory hunter's look in his eyes tells me exactly what he is. And I don't recognize you. I didn't think regulars were common at these things, I say. I'm making the bullshit up as I go, but I know I'm in dangerous territory. Yet I need information. The man shrugs, cocking a smile. There's always the groupies chasing the nothing bliss. I barely suppress a shiver. People go looking for this on purpose? Being totally zoned out while a vampire feeds on them? Need a fix tonight? He asks, his tone expectant. His eyes drop down the length of me, over my exposed shoulders, over the tight fit of violet fabric over my chest, over the drape of the dress on my hips. He leaves little wonder what's going through his head. Not yet, I defer, faking every confident tone in my voice. The night is young. I'll make it worth your time, he purrs. You won't find a gentler offer in here, sweetheart. Whoever said anything about gentle? The reckless words leave my lips before I can think how dangerous they are. I walk off into the crowd before he takes them as an invitation. I've been to far larger parties before. This is a private venue, though being on the second floor, it's not hard to find. A bouncer was situated outside the door, but as I watched for a solid 10 minutes, he never turned anyone away, and he wasn't checking names to a list. So anyone dumb enough to wander in is allowed, but there's probably only 80 or so people in here. It only doesn't feel like a small crowd because the space isn't very large. A man tugs a woman down onto his lap as he falls back into the couch. She gives an excited squeal. He traces the back of his knuckles along her jaw, his eyes fixed on her throat. She lifts her face to the ceiling, her eyes sliding closed, reveling in his touch. He splays his hand on the side of her neck, brushing his thumb over her pulse point. He pulls her in close, and she seems all too eager to be in his embrace. But I catch sight of it as his eyes flash red, and sharp fangs are exposed for just a fraction of a second before his lips lock into her flesh. Just like all the others, the woman tenses for just a moment, and then relaxes into a frozen state. When I'd witnessed this very nearly same event happen 2 weeks ago, I'd been so horrified I'd immediately left. My hands had shaken the entire walk home. I didn't get a moment of sleep that night. Then, for an entire week, I was in hard denial about what I'd seen. I reasoned that something had been slipped into my drink, even though I hadn't had one. I had definitely hallucinated, but I knew the truth in my gut. Fangs plus blood plus victims being immobilized equals vampire. I can still hardly believe what I'm seeing. It took me another week to track down the location of another one of these parties. I only found out about it 3 hours ago, and now here I am. I scan the crowd again. I don't know if I really expected her to be here. If she were okay, I would have heard from her. She's not the type to simply disappear on me, so I shouldn't be surprised when I don't find her face in the crowd. The last thing I want is to draw attention to myself. But I'm desperate. I pull out my phone and open it to a picture of Ophelia. "Excuse me," I say to the woman closest to me. "Have you seen this woman recently?" "I don't think so, but this is my first time coming to one of these parties," she answers. "Thanks," I mutter as I move on. I ask the next man I come across. He says no. I ask 2 more women, and neither of them recognizes Ophelia. I turn, scanning the crowd. If I can figure out who is working this party, they might be my best bet. There, at the very back of the room, I see a man in a black suit open a door. He leads that first woman I spoke to through it and closes it behind them. I take a step forward, something in my gut pulling me in that direction. "Trust me, you don't want to find out what's going on behind that door." The deep voice behind me immediately stops me in my tracks. Alarm bells go off in my brain. Something tingles along my skin, but a shiver runs down my spine at the timbre of the voice. I turn, and the man is a perfect match to the voice. He wears black from head to toe. Black motorcycle boots, black jeans, black t-shirt, black leather jacket. A wash of tattoos spreads from the neckline of his shirt, climbing up his throat, wrapping around his neck. There's a thick, heavy silver chain around his neck. He has a wicked jawline and a clean-shaven face. Both ears are pierced with silver studs, and a matching silver hoop is through his left nostril. Strong and vicious. That's how I describe all of his facial features. Lips of an incubus, a nose every sculptor envies, dark eyes and thick brows, and the most perfect dark wavy locks I've ever seen in my life. He's inarguably the most tempting man I've ever laid eyes on, but every inch of him radiates the same feeling. Dangerous. "You work here?" I manage to ask, even though my mouth is suddenly inexplicably dry. "No," he answers simply. He does a quick scan of me, but it's entirely different from the way the man in the red suit looked at me. I feel as if this man is evaluating me, sizing me up. I recognize that look. It's the same one I use when I evaluate my clients at work. It's the one I use to decide if they can handle themselves on the mat. "Then how do you know what's in that room?" I ask. I stand a little straighter. Even at my full height and wearing 3-inch heels, he still towers above me. "How do you know I don't want to find out?" "Instinct," he says simply. I take a half step closer to him, never breaking eye contact. The only instincts I trust are my own. I step around him, away from that door. I aim for the bar, the opposite end from the man in the red suit. You ever seen this woman around? I ask as I show Ophelia's picture to a woman sitting there. When she looks over at me, she seems slightly dizzy. I scan her neck for bite marks, but find none. She blinks hard, as if trying to clear her vision, but she takes my phone, taking a closer look. Maybe, she says. She looks kind of familiar. These parties are a semi-regular thing, I say, as hope flashes through me. Did you go to one 3 weeks ago? The woman starts tipping sideways, and I lunge forward to steady her. She giggles stupidly and pushes her hair out of her face. I should really stop coming to these things. But forgetting, nothing else makes the voices stop like the bite. Shit, she's not even trying to hide anything. Have vampires always been this obvious? And I've just somehow been oblivious? Did you go to one of these parties 3 weeks ago? I ask again, removing my hands from her when I'm sure she won't fall over again. I did, she says as she leans against the bar, her elbow to the wooden surface, her chin resting in her hand. I think. I don't know. These things all kind of blur together. You should ask Felix. He's always at these things. Who is Felix? I ask, as adrenaline starts burning in my blood. Finally, we might be getting somewhere. The one who looks like Apollo and Hades had a love child, she says, waving in the direction of the man in the red suit. Great. Thank you, I say. And you should probably head home, don't you think? Do you want me to get you a cab? She offers a smile, one that's kind of sad and hopeless. She shrugs one shoulder. There's no one waiting for me there. At least here, I'm not alone. My heart breaks for her a little, and I understand what she's saying just a little too well. There isn't much more I can do for her, though. So I turn and, with a determined deep breath, head down the bar toward Felix. The adrenaline in me spikes harder when Felix catches my gaze, and he has a cocky smile that curls his lips. He's shameless as his eyes drop down the length of me again, and he stands. I don't know exactly how much stronger a vampire is than a human. I can defend myself better than just about any woman in this city. It's the only reason why I have the guts to walk into a party where I'm sure my friend went missing. But a vampire, I'm not so sure I can take him down if he decides not to take no for an answer. When I'm just 4 steps away, a massive body steps between Felix and me. Mr. Tall, dark, and tatted glares at me with dark eyes. Unless you've got a death wish, it's time to call it a night, he growls. And then his hand claps around my upper arm, and he steers me toward the front door. Get your damn hands off me, I seethe. I try yanking out of his grip, but it's like steel. You don't know what the hell you're getting yourself into here, he says, low and cold. Trust me, if you knew the truth, you'd be thanking me. He shoves the door open and hauls me out onto the sidewalk. What truth? That this is a party full of vampires looking to feed off idiots with some seriously twisted kinks? I bark as he lets me pull out of his grasp. His expression goes tight and cold. He didn't expect me to know the truth. Or that you're one of them, I ask with ice in my voice. I walk up to him, determined he's not going to push me around, even if he is a dangerous supernatural being that shouldn't exist. So why pretend you're any different from them? You think you're some savior? That you're saving a sweet, innocent girl from being bitten unknowingly? I shake my head as he stares down at me darkly. You don't know anything about me. Who is she? He asks, and his tone is more even than I'd expect, but there's a surprising amount of regret and maybe anger in his tone. I hesitate for a moment. I don't know this man. I don't know what he's capable of. Everything in me tells me he's dangerous, that he's no knight in shining armor. But he did think he was protecting me by making me leave the party. Do I dare tell him the truth? Ophelia Bennett, I answer. She's my best friend, and I'm pretty positive she went to one of these parties 3 weeks ago. She's been missing ever since then. You know what kind of party this is, and you still walked in there after her, he asks. He's impressed, shocked, maybe a little horrified. He doesn't hide any of the emotions from his tone. Of course, I say, my brows furrowing. We're all each other has, so if you'll excuse me, I need to keep looking for her. I turn to walk back inside, but he catches me by the arm, stopping me in my tracks. Your heart rate says you're scared, he states. But that's not going to stop me, I say, determination stealing my blood. He steadies me for a long moment, and I can see the wheels turning in his head. I can help you find her, he finally says, but I need your help in return. Wary nerves coil in the pit of my stomach, prepared to strike if need be. What the hell is that supposed to mean? Come on, he says, taking a step forward. He doesn't let me go, but his grip loosens just slightly, feeling less threatening. You and I need to talk. Chapter 2. I need to know where we're going to talk, I say firmly. This isn't exactly the kind of conversation you want to have in public, he states, his eyes sliding over to meet mine. You live close by? Not a chance in hell I'm showing you where I live, I say with a shake of my head and a raised eyebrow. Good. That tells me you're not a complete lunatic with a death wish. And I'm surprised at the slight smile that pulls on those obnoxiously perfect lips. Look, I'm going to get a hotel room. And just so you know I mean it when I say I'm not going to try anything, take this. The man pulls a gun that was tucked into the back of his pants and slides it into my bag. A curse slips from my lips, and I check the crowds around us to be sure no one saw. Would a gun even stop you? I might know what you are, but I haven't quite figured all the rules out yet. Aim true enough, and you'll take me out, he says. There's a dark confidence in him that's unnerving, yet alluring at the same time. And if I don't, I press. You might slow me down for a second, maybe long enough to get a second shot off. His expression is cold and even as I look over at him in horrified annoyance. I don't get the chance to say anything else because he pulls a door open and steers me inside, enveloping us in warmer air. My mouth drops open for a moment as I take it in. There are towering ceilings that immediately tell me this place has money to spare. The entire place is opulent, in the most modern and simplistic way possible. There's a wall of mirrors and crazy chandeliers. Everything is decorated in natural wood and stone. This is the kind of hotel you only ever see in the feeds of billionaires online. I look over at the man next to me as he walks to the attendant and starts reserving a room. He looks like the type who runs in motorcycle gangs and hangs out in tattoo parlors. Not the type who can walk into any posh hotel at the last moment and just casually ask for a room. But I see it when he hands over the black credit card. It's all done and taken care of in less than 2 minutes. Come on, he says with a nod of his head. I don't say a word as we cross to the elevators and step inside. And it all really hits me when the doors slide closed, trapping me with this man in a very, very small space. A week ago, I found out vampires exist. I've seen fangs and inhuman strength and how they can incapacitate you with a bite. And not only have I talked to one for the first time tonight, I allowed one to drag me out of where I was meant to be and let him take me somewhere private. My hand slides to my bag, closer to that gun he gave me. I'm not going to hurt you, he says again, without looking at me. His eyes stay fixed on the elevator doors. But every inch of you is broadcasting danger, and it's not just the fact that you're a vampire, I say. Every muscle in my body is tensed. My brain is going through every maneuver I might have to take him out, or at least keep his fangs off of me if he turns out to be a liar. I am dangerous, he says darkly, but not to you. Not right now. The doors slide open, and he steps out. When I hesitate inside the elevator for a moment, he turns. You're never going to find your friend without my help, and I'm never going to be able to get to her without you. My heart is racing, but as I once again imagine all the horrible things that could have happened to Ophelia, I step out of the elevator. Only then do I realize that it's opened up to a penthouse suite. Everything matches the lobby. All the decor is natural tones, dark wood, gray stones. I couldn't afford even the knickknacks that sit on the side tables. Everything about this place screams wealth, and it's massive. The space opens up into a huge living area with couches that look like I'd get the best sleep of my life on them. There's a gigantic dining table in the area off to the side, And beyond that is one of the most beautiful kitchens I've ever seen. Toward the back, I see a set of double doors that open to a massive bed with fluffy white blankets and pillows. And there are massive floor-to-ceiling windows everywhere, granting us glittering views of the city and a little peekaboo view of Central Park. Are you in the mafia? I didn't mean for the words to slip out past my lips, but they're there before I can stop them. The man hesitates 2 seconds too long. Not exactly. My family has a certain influence in the city, though. Shit, I really am the world's biggest idiot. Not only is this guy a vampire, he's from a powerful, dangerous family, too. You said your friend has been missing for 3 weeks, the man says. He walks into the living room and sinks down into a tufted black leather chair. Even the way he sits screams dangerous and powerful. I have to look away for a moment when I find my eyes studying the tattoos rising up his neck. You weren't with her when she went missing? I shake my head. Cautiously, I walk into the living room. Still holding on to my bag for dear life, I sink into the couch across from him. She mentioned something about a red party. She wanted to go real bad, and she begged me to go with her. But I had a class to teach. You're a teacher? He asks, cocking an eyebrow in surprise. Mixed martial arts, I quip, enjoying when his expression changes from doubtful to impressed. I teach women's self-defense classes. No wonder you're crazy enough to walk into a party like that by yourself, he responds. And the way he's looking at me changes. There's a little more respect in his eyes, a little more curiosity. He's looking at me less like I'm something fragile and stupid. She decided to go to the party by herself. I move on. I thought she'd call me after and tell me how it was, but she didn't. I didn't think too much of it. She could have just been tired after. But she didn't call me the next day either. She didn't answer my texts. Her phone rang once when I called her and then went to voicemail. I pull my phone out and open my texts to her. They still only read as delivered, not read. I started getting worried, so I went by her apartment. It was locked, which I think is a good thing. She didn't answer, but her neighbor said she hadn't seen Ophelia come in or out in 2 days. I looked back up at the man. It took me a while. Whoever is throwing these parties doesn't make it easy to find any information on them. But I finally found the date and time for the one tonight. As you saw, my search wasn't proving too fruitful. I believe it's my father's company that's throwing the parties, the man says. He crosses one ankle over the opposite knee. I parted ways with him 3 years ago. But I was looking into the company a few weeks ago, and there are charges that don't line up. My father is a real estate mogul. I wanted to find out why the hell he was renting spaces. Why he was hiring caterers, bouncers, bartenders. He's throwing parties, but not attending them, and not hosting them in his own spaces. It doesn't add up. Your friend going missing at one of his parties. He shakes his head, his eyes losing focus as he trails off. You think they're connected? I ask. I can't connect the dots yet, but something like nervous fear drips into my stomach. She have any connection to vampires that you know of? He asks, as his eyes meet mine once more. Hell no, I answer, confident. Feels like a lure, then, maybe. His words make me sick. You think he's luring unsuspecting people in? To be snacks? The man shakes his head. I don't know. I was watching everyone at that party for an hour when you came in. It's obvious a lot of the humans are regulars. They knew what was going on, but others definitely didn't. Ophelia didn't know, I say, shaking my head confidently. Then my eyes narrow at him. If you're a vampire, why would you need my help getting to her? He lets out a hard breath, and his eyes slide away from mine to look out the window at the night that is never fully dark in this city. I get the feeling you don't know much about my world yet. You're not going to like what I'm about to explain. Trust me, I haven't liked a single bit of this night yet, I counter. Why slow down now? He looks back at me. There's a darkness in his eyes that tells me I'm out of my depth. I have my own bitterness and venom, but this man, he overshadows me 100-fold. You have to be born to a vampire father and a human mother to one day be a vampire, at least the kind that I am, a born. I learned my father was a vampire when I was 16. and he told me what I would be someday. I just had to die first. I would have expected to feel overwhelmed at the information. This is huge, a massive wave, and I'm just a little tiny creature on the shore. But I just find myself feeling relieved. I've lived in terrified cluelessness for the last week. I've had nightmares. I've speculated. My imagination has tortured me with the unknowns for what feels like years. Finally, here it is. The truth. Straight from the mouth of the horse. When the man doesn't see me having a meltdown over his truth, he presses on. I died when I was 26. 4 days later, I resurrected to what I am now. I've been 26 for 6 years now. You're immortal. Not a question. He studies me closely, evaluating every inch of my reaction. He nods. But like I said, vampires can be killed. How exactly? I cut him off. My eyes scan him, looking for weak points. I don't find any. He hesitates 1 second. It gives me immense satisfaction that he's looking at me like I could be a threat to him, like I might try to kill him the moment he tells me how. Beheading, he says, holding my gaze, the coldness returning to his eyes. Stabbing through the heart. We heal quickly, and we're pretty damn tough. So if you're going to go after a vampire, you'd better have perfect aim and plenty of strength. Noted, I state. There's a decorative metal canoe on the side table next to me. It's pretty pointy on the end. I don't know exactly how fast this bastard is, but I might have a shot of getting to it quick enough and plunging it through his chest. Not a fucking chance, he says evenly. You'd make it maybe 2 feet before I could rip you apart. My eyes flick back to meet his. Ice rockets through my veins. And no, I can't read your mind. But you're just being way too damn obvious, he adds. But we've established some level of trust here, don't you think? I tell you exactly how to kill me. You know what I am. You could tell any authority. We're in this shit together now, right? And then he trails off, his eyes narrowing. You're stupid, you're stupid, you're stupid. My brain is screaming at me. How the hell did you get yourself in this situation? But my name leaves my lips anyway. Lana. He mulls that over for several moments longer than seems necessary. He notes I didn't offer my last name. I'm confident in that. Aries Hunt, he says finally. A shiver works its way down my spine just before goosebumps flash over my entire body. Aries Hunt. How fitting. As in the god of war? I question, even though every syllable of it makes perfect sense. My father picked it, fitting for what he wanted me to be. He interlaces his fingers, looking at me over the top of his knuckles. My father is in real estate. He owns a huge portion of Manhattan, and he'll keep buying up every bit of it he can. He's building an empire. I am his heir. But not the only one. I look out the window. I can barely afford 1 room in a shitty apartment shared with 2 other women. Aries is heir to an empire in the most expensive city in the country. My father is building not just an empire of skyscrapers. He's determined to make a presence here in the city, to have an influence, an immortal one. An empire of vampires. Just how many siblings do you have? I ask. And I know it. This is the part he warned me I wouldn't like. 8 so far, he says. The tenseness in his jaw is telling of how he feels about this. I'm the oldest, the only one who has resurrected so far. The next oldest is only 16. The youngest is a year old, and I don't think he has any plans to stop anytime soon. That's disgusting, I say, not even bothering to hide the sneer building on my face. Agreed, he says, his tone cold as ice. It's the reason I left 3 years ago. My father told me it was my turn to help build the empire, started pressuring me within months of my resurrection. I told him I had no intention of ever being a breeding stud. My stomach turns. Augustus Lonan doesn't take the answer no very well. Aries grits out. Things got ugly, complicated, violent. I'd worked for my father for years, went to school, got the degree he demanded, helped him grow richer than the king of many countries. But my refusing to make more heirs, he took it as a rejection, a betrayal. When I couldn't change his mind, I left. Disappeared for a year so he would stop looking for me. When I came back, I moved in with my sister. Same mom, different fathers. She's the only person I've ever actually loved, besides our mother. Aries looks away, and I get the sense this isn't something he shares lightly. This is something vulnerable. To someone more dangerous, more vicious, confessing who the only person you love is would put them in danger. Once more, Aries is trusting me with something important. Augustus knows I'm back in the city, he continues. He's keeping tabs. He's waiting for me to come to my senses, to come back into the fold. And that's how we're going to find your friend. My heart jumps in my chest. What do you mean? Aries' expression darkens. I'm going to finally come to my senses. I'm going to return to the fold, but on my own terms, where he can't shove it down my throat. My head is spinning just a little. This is already getting so damn complicated. I'm not sure I'm following his line of thought. I need you to pretend to be my fiancée, Lana. Chapter 3. You're insane. Aries lowers his laced fingers, his hands resting on the arms of the expensive chair. He leans farther back into his seat, and his eyes slide down me. But it doesn't make my skin crawl, not in the same way Felix's gaze did back at the party. He's still evaluating me, sizing me up, determining my ability to do what it's going to take. Do you want to get your friend back or not? He asks. His tone isn't critical. It isn't spoken with a sneer. It's simply logical. I'll do whatever it takes, I hiss out, my frustration rising. Then this is what it takes, vengeance, he says coolly. Goosebumps flash over my skin at the nickname. He doesn't say it snidely. It almost comes out sounding like a compliment. Augustus is tied to this. I wish it had nothing to do with him, but my gut instinct says it does. It's all being paid for by his company, and they're trying to hide it. You will not get anywhere near his company on your own. You're a hell of a lot more competent than I could ever hope for, but even if you're the world champion MMA fighter, you still couldn't go up against Augustus's lackeys. So, I know this is sudden, I know it sounds insane, but if you want to save your friend, you need me, and I need you. This isn't just about Ophelia, I declare. You were looking into your father before I walked into that party. What do you actually need me for? Aries studies me, hesitance in his eyes. Again, here comes another part I know I'm not going to like. A little distance and time have given me some perspective on my father. I always knew he did things his own way, but lately I've had a suspicion it's a lot darker than I realized. So I started digging, he says, his dark eyes fixed on me. Like I said, to get back into my father's good graces, to be invited back into his inner circle, I need to kiss his ass. I need you to go along with it that we're engaged, and we're already trying for a baby. Those last 6 words make my stomach lurch. A disgusted breath escapes my lungs. I shake my head and look out the window. I promise, there will be absolutely no sex involved, Aries says, spiking anxiety in my system. I should fucking hope not, I bark, looking back at him with a sneer. But anything else? Aries sighs and leans forward, resting his elbows on his knees. I need you to play a part, Lana, and we are both going to have to play it convincingly. So, yes, we're going to have to act like we actually like each other when we're in public. Holding hands? Cuddling? Whispering soft nothings in each other's ears? Kissing? I clarify with disdainful sarcasm in my tone. Yes, he says, his jaw tightening. And maybe a little more. What more could there be? I bark in shock. The look he's giving me says he's reevaluating his decision to propose to me, and it makes me bristle even more. I need to get my cool back. I bring Ophelia to the front of my brain. I think of her smile, her laugh. I think of late nights on her couch and dozens of nights out in the city. I have no one left but her. Augustus is keeping tabs on me. Aries pushes forward. His tone is softer now, more controlled. He's going to doubt the speed of this, since you and I have never been seen together. If I just tell him we're engaged, he'll never believe it. To sell it, you and I are going to have to move in together. I simply stare into those hazel eyes of his for a dozen heartbeats. What do I have to lose? My life? Maybe my sanity? my grip on reality. But it's not like I have anyone else in this world. Ophelia is my best friend. I live in a shit apartment. It's truly nothing to give up. What about my job? I think out loud, but it's certainly relevant. I work full-time. I can't afford to just quit and walk away. Aries stares at me for a long moment, his knee bouncing up and down just slightly. We will have to make this look real. As my fiancé, you won't have to work. I look at him wordlessly for a minute as that processes. I remember where we are, in an extremely expensive hotel, in the penthouse suite. Aries handed over that black card like it meant nothing. I realize then that Aries is not financially dependent on his father, not if they've been estranged for 3 years. Aries is taking me on as his kept fiancé. I have an emotional connection to my work, I admit. I don't really want to just walk away, but my boss, he's a massive asshole, and he's not going to like me taking an unknown amount of time off. The smallest of smiles cocks in one corner of his mouth, and it just about makes my heart stop. Something grows, hot in my lower belly. I'll pay him a visit. I can be persuasive. I don't doubt it. It's hard to imagine telling a man like Aries no. I lean back in my seat, my death grip on my bag loosening. My eyes wander the penthouse, not actually seeing anything. I feel overwhelmed, exhausted, but after 3 weeks of feeling terrified and desperate, I have my answer. I have a possibility. I have hope that I might find Ophelia. Fuck it. All right, I say in a breath. I'm in. Aries' brows rise slightly higher, telling me he didn't actually expect me to agree to this. Okay, he says, sounding a little relieved. Go home. Pack. I will pick you up just after sunset. I raise an eyebrow at that. So the daylight part is true? Aries stands. Not like you think, he says. He watches me with expectation, a clear indication it's time to leave. He probably paid thousands of dollars for this room, and we've only occupied it for an hour. But I'll explain everything later. We head to the elevator and then step inside. I need your number, Aries says as the doors slide closed. He hands me his phone with a new contact card open. I hesitate for just a moment. Once I give it to him, I can't just disappear and pretend this night never happened. But until Ophelia is safe and sound, I can't do that anyway. I take his phone and type my first and last name, Lana Kincaid, and my number. Just 2 seconds after I hand it back, my own phone vibrates. You've got my number. Text me your address, he says. Very business and matter of fact. He once again stares straight forward. I'll be there with the truck this evening. Okay, I say, my throat feeling thick. The doors slide open, and we cross the lobby. I step outside, and it's clear Aries isn't leaving just yet. I reach into my bag, my fingers wrapping around the cold metal. Keep it, Aries says, raising his hand slightly. You're unlucky enough to be my fiancé now. You need protection at all times. Why the hell am I blushing? Why does him actually calling me his fiancé make my stomach do an immature little flip? See you tonight, Aries, I say, his name crossing my lips for the first time. I like the way it tastes. See you soon, Vengeance. Chapter 4. You're really not even going to attempt to find a replacement for you? I don't bother looking up at Danica as I continue stuffing my clothes into garbage bags. Maybe if you and Kylie pick, you'll actually like whoever ends up in room 3. I hear it as she snaps her mouth closed. Danica never was very direct. Never would she expect me to call her out on her obvious dislike for me. I've lived here for 2 years now, and she's never breathed a friendly word in my direction. I don't know what the hell I did to get on her bad side, but now it doesn't matter. I didn't even know you had a boyfriend, she says, as she crosses her arms over her chest, raising her chin. Fiancé, I correct her, finally looking up at her from beneath my lashes. I turn and begin stuffing my shoes into a box. There's not much of anything left in the room now. I don't know if I believe you, she says, though her tone doesn't sell her words. You haven't dated anyone since that sleazeball who cheated on you with the girl across the hall, and now you have a fiancé. You think I'd tell you anything? I ask as I scoop the last of my things into the last empty box. You're the most judgmental and critical person I've ever met, Danica. This day couldn't come soon enough. You're so full of bullshit, she says in a defensive huff. And it's so incredibly satisfying when there's a solid knock on the door just then. Danica's eyebrows raise slightly, her head whipping toward the door. I don't fight the satisfied smirk that takes over my face as I step around her and pull the door open. My heart skips 2 beats when I open it to reveal Aries standing there, as promised. Out of fear? Probably. Out of shameless appreciation? I'll never admit it. Sorry I'm early, Vengeance, he says in a low, cool tone. I see him note Danica behind me for the briefest moment. I couldn't wait any longer. My heart then decides to relocate into my throat when he takes a step forward and his hand wraps around my waist. Low, intimate. He pulls me toward him and he presses the hottest, sweetest kiss to my forehead. My entire body lights on fire at every tiny point of contact, and within half a second, every bit of me feels consumed. I look up at him to see his gaze fixed on Danica. You're right, this place is a shithole. He has no idea how perfect his words are. Danica picked this place, and it was she who decorated it and picked all the furniture. A single annoyed sound escapes her. I turn to see her simply shake her head. Aries, he says as he steps forward, extending a hand to her. Lana's fiancé. I don't see a ring, Danica says, as she just looks at Aries' tattooed extended hand. Something cold and predatorial shifts in his eyes. Doubt and fear prickle along the back of my neck. I slide my hand into his extended one, wrapping it around my waist. I just might die of a heart attack tonight. I might hate Danica, but I don't know that I want to see Aries rip her to shreds. I get the impression that's possible. Everyone knows the best diamonds come out of Russia. The best in the business also happens to be a former KGB smuggler. You know how to motivate a man like that to work faster. I'm all ears. Every bit of color drains from Danica's face. She swallows once. She looks Aries over, taking in the layers of black, the tattoos peeking out from all the edges of his clothing, the metal in his ears and nose. I wouldn't dare talk back to him either. I'm keeping your deposit, she says, her words tight, the pitch slightly too high. She turns and walks into her bedroom and shuts the door. She's a real treat, Aries says, glaring death at her door. You have no idea, I say, just a little too softly. He looks down at me, and I'm surprised to find intensity and real annoyance there. His left hand curls into a fist. Come on in, he says, instead of walking into Danica's room and doing something violent and supernatural. I was so caught up in Aries, I didn't even notice the team of 3 beefy guys standing out in the hall behind him. What's yours? Aries asks as they file inside. All I have to do is point and direct. The 3 guys grab box after box, hauling them to the elevator and down to the truck parked below. And Aries doesn't just stand there. He loads up the heaviest of boxes, hauling them out. It's all done in less than half an hour. 2 years of my life here, packed up and removed in less time than it takes me to run 1 load of laundry. Any last burning goodbyes you're wanting to offer? Aries asks as the movers head out with the last of the bags. Nope, I answer honestly. Danica can go rot in her room forever. Kylie hasn't been home all day, but there's no love lost between her and me either. Let's get out of here. I don't know who the show is for when Aries takes my hand in his and leads me out of the apartment. He doesn't bother to shut the door behind him as he exits. I may be going into shock. I don't know what to say as he takes us to the elevator. He doesn't say a word as we ride the elevator to the ground floor. But he doesn't let my hand go, even when we're alone. He only tightens his hold when the doors open, and we walk out the front doors. His grip is firm, yet somehow it doesn't feel threatening. It feels, what is that? Protective? But my line of thought is immediately disrupted when he crosses the sidewalk and goes straight to a matte black motorcycle parked at the curb. He grabs a helmet and extends it toward me. Let's go home, Vengeance. That's yours? I ask, my voice shaking just slightly. The 3rd greatest love of my life, he says, as a rogue smile crooks the corner of his mouth. I take a deep breath and accept the helmet. I pull it down over my head. He steps forward, taking care as he latches the buckle and adjusts it for me. He offers this wry, coy smile that makes all of my insides liquefy. Hold on, he says, as he turns and straddles the bike. He shifts in the seat, clearly making room for me. The organ in my chest is trying to find a quick exit, but I clench and unclench my fists just once before I climb onto the back of the bike. Hesitantly, I put my hands on Aries' hips. He's not a man you just touch casually. The man is named after the freaking god of war, and he looks it. But as he fires up the bike, the engine snarling to life, he hits the gas, just slightly. My arms wrap around him in a death grip, my face buried into his back. I swear his chest rumbles just slightly with a chuckle, but he throttles the gas and we take off down the street. There's insane traffic, but you wouldn't know it existed as Aries weaves his way through the lanes. I finally dare open my eyes, watching as thousands of people fall behind us as familiar landmarks come and go. And I realize I'm going from the worst apartment in Sutton Place to the Upper West Side. And not just the Upper West Side. Aries slows, and I find a moving truck parked in front of one of the oldest and most historic buildings in New York City. Without hesitating, he guides the bike down into the underground parking at the back of the building. So, you obviously didn't go destitute when you cut ties with your father, I say, after I've climbed off the bike and pulled the helmet off. I hand it back to Aries, who secures it on the bike. I realize then that he never wore his own helmet, but maybe vampires are wreck-proof. Not exactly, he says vaguely. But he doesn't elaborate as he heads straight for a door. I follow after him, memorizing my surroundings as I go. We walk into a long hallway. The floors are covered with elaborate tile. The walls are crisp, fresh white. There are a few doors that branch off here and there, utility closets and maintenance access. But finally, we break into a gorgeous lobby. A chandelier hangs overhead, and instead of crystals, it looks as if it's crusted with diamonds. The ceiling is a beautiful dome with elaborate detail carved into the moldings. 2 large arched windows give us a view of Central Park. A set of gleaming elevator doors sits positioned across from the desk, where an older man stands and crosses to us. "You the ones moving into 8A?" he asks as he slides his hands into his pockets. He has to be well over 60 years old. His fully gray hair matches his fully gray mustache, but there's a confidence in his step that makes me think in his younger years he was more than capable of handling himself. "Yes, sir," Aries answers, and something in my view of him shifts just a bit when I note the respect he gives the doorman. "I'm Aries Hunt, and this is my fiancée, Lana." "Pleasure," he says. He's eyeing Aries, and I can't exactly blame him. My new fake fiancé looks like he should be making shady deals in Harlem, not moving into multi-million-dollar apartments like it's no big deal. "Name's Laszlo, but most just call me Laz. You need anything, just let me know." "Thank you, Laz," Aries says. He offers Laszlo a small, polite smile and slips his hand into mine. There's that hurricane again. "Nice to meet you," I offer, remembering my manners as Aries turns us to the elevator. It dings before Aries even presses the button, and the 3 movers step out, giving Aries a nod before they head back out to the truck. This building is old, older than most that surround us, but as we take the elevator up 8 floors to the top level, it doesn't shake, doesn't creak or squeal. It's as smooth as any brand new skyscraper. It opens to reveal a hallway with brilliant white walls and glossy white floors. I follow as Aries pulls a set of keys from his pocket. He stops at a door marked 8A and slips one of the keys off the ring. "Welcome home, Vengeance," he says as he extends it to me. That fucking name. It sends a wave of goosebumps washing down my entire body. I'm embarrassed to take the key in case he notices them. I don't want him seeing the effect he has on me just by calling me a nickname. My fingers close around the key, and I'm careful to avoid skin contact. If he notices me acting weird, he doesn't make it obvious. He simply pushes open the door, already unlocked for the movers. I step inside and utterly freeze. There's no way this is the right place. I try to hiss Aries' name to call him back, to tell him he's accidentally unlocked the wrong apartment, but the words are trapped in my lungs, and Aries strides in without hesitating. It's the most beautiful apartment I could ever imagine. The floors are a perfect walnut color, and even though I can tell they're old, they're gorgeous. White walls climb above me before they meet a ceiling crisscrossed with beautiful beams the same color as the floor. White pillars hold up an arch that separates this space as the entryway. Beyond that, there is a massive living room. Huge windows look out over Central Park. "Lana?" Aries calls as he looks over his shoulder back at me, his brows furrowing just slightly. I just blink, taking it all in, my mouth slightly agape. "What's wrong?" he asks, taking a step back toward me. I take a breath, but still, words don't come for a moment. I take it all in. The immaculate and obviously brand new furniture, the paintings hanging on the wall. I'm floored by the beauty of it all, and I can barely see any of the space. "You bought this place?" I ask, my words not wanting to work. This is ours to live in." I feel him studying me, but I can't look away from the most beautiful space I've ever seen. "Welcome home," he simply says again. Finally, my feet find life again. I take a step inside and then another, followed by another. "This is," I say breathlessly as the room opens up. It's lovely, simply put. Cozy couches and plush armchairs in the most modernly cozy way possible. Heavy drapes frame the truly massive windows, displaying the nearly dark night. And outside, there's so much green. Green comes at such a high price in this city, and we have endless amounts before us. "A housekeeper will be coming in twice a week," Aries says as he walks down the hall. He opens a door, looking inside, and I get the feeling that he hasn't really looked around yet. "A cook will come in twice a week as well. You have any kind of food allergies?" "No," I reply automatically, before what he actually said sinks in. "Wait, what? A cook?" Aries nods and wanders farther down the hall. He opens another door. "You like to cook?" "I don't even really know how," I confess without thinking. "But you're just going to have someone come in here and cook for us? Do you even eat food?" Aries turns back toward me slightly, an eyebrow raising. "Yes, I eat food, Lana." Huh. It never would have crossed my mind that a vampire would still eat normal food. Guess I should have expected that. How would one ever sustain a body like Aries on blood alone? That kind of physique takes a serious protein intake. I follow after Aries, taking in the apartment as I go. Off the living room, there is a huge dining room with a modern table and 10 chairs. Attached is a kitchen that nearly makes me want to learn how to cook. The hallway stretches beyond that, and next, I find a library with high-end leather furniture occupying the space. Beyond that, there are 2 large bedrooms and a bathroom, with some serious amenities between them. Next, we find a home gym that makes my mouth water. And finally, a ridiculously long walk later at the end of the hall, is the last bedroom. It's beautiful. Beams crisscross the ceiling. A sparkling chandelier hangs from the ceiling. Those heavy drapes frame the stunning arched windows. The bedroom is placed in the corner of the building, offering stunning views of the park and the impressive buildings down the side road. A king-sized bed dominates the center of the room, an ungodly amount of pillows piled atop the fluffy comforter. Off the bedroom, Aries wanders into a ridiculously large bathroom, and I follow. "A tub?" I gape. There it is, a massive and immaculate clawfoot thing in the center of the room, right in front of the window. I've lived in 5 different apartments in New York throughout my life, and I've never seen a bathtub in one. "Not bad," Aries notes, though he doesn't have nearly as much wonder in his tone as I do. There's also a huge 2-person shower, double vanities, and a separate toilet room. And branching off of the bathroom is a walk-in closet that's the size of a small boutique shop. It's also stocked with a decent-sized collection of men's clothes. All of them are black, with the exception of a few white t-shirts. "Okay, I know I might be kind of stupid because you laid it out fairly clearly," I admit, as I look at all of Aries' clothes hanging in the closet. They're accompanied by several of my bags sitting on the floor, waiting to be unpacked. But it didn't really cross my mind that we'd be sharing a bedroom. I feel too embarrassed to look at the man who could probably walk into any club and get any woman he wanted to go home with him. Aries might be terrifying looking in some ways, but he's also quite possibly the most beautiful man I've ever laid eyes on. And I'm maybe just a little scandalized at the thought of sharing a bed with him. "I don't sleep much," he says, instead of making it more awkward. "So it won't be a problem. The bed is yours. When I do have to sleep, I'll do it somewhere else." The bed in the next room over looked halfway decent. It looked like the most comfortable bed I've ever seen in my life, I point out, finally able to look over at him with his reassurance. I give him a look, one that says I'm beginning to realize he's a rich man who has never slept on anything less than resort-quality bamboo sheets. He simply shrugs with a faint smile. You don't do anything halfway, do you? I ask, as we wander back out toward the hall. The movers walk through the door again. I realize then that they've already put some of my things in the primary bedroom. It's so big and so stunning, I didn't even notice the stash of my things. It's all part of the show, Aries says as we walk back down the hall. He crosses the kitchen and opens the fridge, but of course it's empty. Well, why the hell does it have to be so big? I say softly as I look around again. 'Cause we're planning to fill it up with kids, remember? My eyes snap back to him. He looks at me with those dark eyes of his. That's going to take some getting used to, and maybe test my acting skills. I've never really been sure if I wanted kids, to be honest. At least we have that in common, he says. He turns to a cupboard, and I'm surprised it's fully stocked when he opens it. He grabs a glass and fills it with water. He sets it on the counter in front of me and nods to the bar stool. I pull up a seat, and he leans forward, his elbows resting on the gorgeous marble. We need to make a plan. We have to do this smart, or Augustus is going to know something is wrong. I'm not looking to put you in any more danger than necessary. You always this gallant? I ask as I grab the glass and lift it to my lips. Trust me, he says, as he crooks that signature small smile of his. Thinking of me as gallant would be a mistake. I don't know, I reply as I set the glass down. You look like a hard ass, and you can talk the talk sometimes, but so far, you're not nearly as terrifying as I thought you'd be. A true smile curls on Aries' lips, and embers spark in his eyes just for a moment, before they flare brilliant blood red. A curse escapes my mouth as I shove my way back from the counter, knocking the bar stool right over. Don't ever forget what I really am, Lana, he says. There's still a smile on his lips, but there's a real warning in his tone. Just because I have good control now doesn't mean you aren't the best smelling dessert I've ever come across in my life. My face feels hot. I know I must be blushing, probably brilliant red. How the hell am I supposed to interpret that? Okay, fine, you're a terrifying vampire, I say as I pull the chair upright again and slide back up to the counter. I won't forget that. Now, what's the plan, Venom? He arches an eyebrow at me, and the smile pulling at his lips tells me he likes the nickname I've just bestowed upon him that's complimentary to my own. I think it's a fairly across-the-board thing that family is going to have a million questions when you're engaged. Aries moves on. Considering we've known each other for... He checks the incredibly expensive-looking watch on his wrist. 22 hours. I think we need to take a few days and get our story straight. I need to know your story, you're gonna need to know mine. The idea of having to tell Aries my story makes my skin go cold. But he's right. If we're going to sell it that we're in love, that we're engaged, we need to know each other. I can do this. To get Ophelia back. Okay, I finally say. We'll play 20 questions over the next few days. More like 1,000 questions, he says, arching an eyebrow at me. But yes, we need to go talk to your boss, get you some time off. And tomorrow, we need to go pick a ring. I can't help but smile and shake my head as I look away. This is just so damn weird, and it's all just moving along at lightning speed. For what it's worth, you're handling all this about 1,000,000 times better than I think anyone else ever would. My eyes slide back to meet his. You think so? He nods his head. For starters, you learned vampires exist, and you haven't tried to stake me or run away. You haven't called the cops, and a vampire just begged you to pretend to be his fiancée and move in with him. And you're here. If I didn't know any better, I would almost say you were meant to be a part of this world, Vengeance. He holds my gaze for a long moment, neither of us saying a word, and I realize that there are two parts to Aries' hunt. The hard, dangerous, terrifying near-mafia heir to the city, and the man who is protective of a woman he doesn't even know yet, and says all the right words at just the right time. Maybe you could explain it to me now? I break the silence. Your world. I saw fangs and people all zoned out and put two and two together, but any of the details, I have no idea yet. Okay, I'll explain it to you. But then that's it for tonight. It's been a fucking day. You need to get some sleep. Two sides, Venom and Valiant. I don't know if I'm tired. I've been running on adrenaline, disbelief, and pure stubbornness today. He's not wrong, though. A breaking point is probably not far off. That's the last of it, Mr. Hunt. I nearly jump out of my skin when his voice comes from behind, back toward the bedroom. The movers all walk out into the kitchen, barely looking like they've broken a sweat after all their trips back and forth with my things. Thank you for your help on the short notice, Aries says as he walks over to the man. He pulls out his wallet and extracts some cash. I don't catch how many of them there are, but I see they're all hundreds. He hands the money off to the man, who gives Aries an appreciative tip of his head before all three of them disappear out the door. I follow Aries back to the living room. He settles into one of those expensive-looking chairs, and I lay down on the couch after I kick my shoes off. I don't know how vampires came into existence, Aries admits. He sits there, both feet on the floor, both hands resting on the armrests. He looks powerful, sitting there, dangerous. Some kind of evolution, a curse, a science experiment. I don't know, but I do know we've been around a long time. Some of us are old. How old? I pry. My curiosity is running wild now, despite the terrible, impossible subject of my curiosity. Hundreds of years, Aries says. I blink harder and wonder if I need to clean my ears. There's no way I heard that right. The oldest born I've ever met was over 400 years old, Aries elaborates. Augustus himself is over 80 years old, but doesn't look a day over 40. So you stop aging at whatever age you die, and what did you call it? Resurrect? I ask. He nods. Like I said, I was 26 when I died. I've been 26 for 6 years. So you're really 32, I guess, he says. As I told you, you create more born with a vampire father and a human mother. Once a woman resurrects, she can't have any children. Of course, I say, annoyance dripping from my tone. The gender unfairness of the world doesn't stop at being human or vampire. We're getting off track here, Aries replies with a hint of annoyance. Some of the rumors about vampires are true. We do have to have blood to survive. We do crave it. We're faster than humans, immeasurably stronger. We're predators. And humans are your only prey? I don't crave blood from anything else, Aries acknowledges. We're immortal, but as I told you, we can be killed. You said the sunlight thing wasn't what I thought, I encourage. He nods. Once a vampire, your eyes stay dilated, always. It's what allows us to see in the dark. My vision is about 10 times better than it was when I was still human, and I had 20/20 vision. But because of the dilation, we're nearly blind when the sun is out. It's damn painful. What about sunglasses? I ask, and almost as soon as I voice the thought, I feel stupid for asking. They help. I'm surprised when Aries gives me the answer, and it's simple. I have custom ones I've had made, but trust me, it's still uncomfortable. We still far prefer the night. Those curtains aren't going to be open much during the day, are they? I ask as my eyes go to them. Sorry, kitten, he says, his voice a purr. You won't be getting a whole lot of sunlight in this place. How many vampires are there in the world? I ask. My brain is tumbling through a million questions. I don't have time to dwell on such a mundane issue as sunlight in my new home. Aries shakes his head, a hint of a smile pulling on his mouth again. No clue. Not that I travel much, but I've met a few other born here and there throughout the world. Here in New York City, though, I'd guess there's 100 or so of us. That's actually shockingly few, considering there are nearly 8.5 million people in this city. You said the born are one kind of vampire. I shift my thoughts. What other kind is there? The bitten, he says, and I detect a bit of a sigh in his voice. If a vampire drinks from a human and takes too much blood, but not quite enough to kill them, the vampire venom takes over when they're in that weakened state. They'll change. They aren't as strong or fast as a born. And they're not immortal. They still age as usual. But their existence is problematic. Why? I question. They don't tend to have very good control. At least, not in the beginning. Aries continues. He crosses one ankle over the opposite knee. As I'm sure you've already put together, the numbers aren't in favor for vampires. Exposure is a real danger. The bitten can't control their urges very well, so they put all of us under threat. But then there's also the debt. I don't even know what that means, and I already don't like the sound of it. The bitten have a debt to whoever sires them, Aries explains. If I created a bitten, they couldn't help but obey every little command I gave them. They're unfailingly loyal. They'll do anything for their sire. They don't have any control. They're basically slaves, I say. Pity fills me, but also anger. The power imbalance is so damn extreme. Yes, Aries admits. The debt eventually wears off. It might only last months, but more often, it lasts years. So, because of all these issues, the creation of a bitten is extremely frowned upon. You hear stories, fairy tales, horrors. Not that I ever thought vampires were real, but I always thought vampires could just make more vampires by biting them. Turns out they can make more, but they're astronomically less superior. What else? I ask, even as it finally hits me. I feel all the adrenaline burn out of my system. The curiosity has mostly been sated. Now I'm just exhausted from being awake through the entirety of last night, and now it's getting late again. I'm sure there's more, Aries says, but that's all the basics for now. Okay, I say, groaning a little as I sit up. I'm exhausted, and I plan to make good use of that gym in the morning. I think you called it. That's enough for today. He fixes those dark eyes on me for a long moment, studying me as if I'm something interesting and complicated. You're still not freaking out. You're okay with all of this. Okay with it? No, I state as I stand and turn toward the bedroom. But I always knew the world was bigger than me. The proof I've seen tells me it's pointless to fight against the facts. Adapt or die, right? Right, he says softly. Good night, Venom, I say as I continue down the hallway. Good night, Vengeance, I hear him call after me. Chapter 5. I'm extremely confused when I wake in the morning. This incredible bed isn't mine. That ceiling is completely unfamiliar. The smell of this place isn't old and slightly sour like it should be. And it's too cool for what me and my roommates can afford to spend on air conditioning in the summer. But as I sit up and look around the beautiful bedroom, it all comes flooding back. Right. I gave up my apartment to move in with a vampire I don't even know. You're insane, Lana, I think to myself. But I roll out of bed and scrounge through the bags of my clothes. I pull on some workout clothes and head straight into the home gym. Never ever would I associate such a luxury to myself. Growing up, we always struggled. There was never enough money. I was the kid who got every bit of clothing from a second-hand store. I never owned anything new in my life. And now, I'm living in one of the most expensive buildings in New York City, walking into my own personal gym. Maybe I hit my head on my way to that party, and now I'm actually lying in a coma in some hospital, dreaming up this insane life. The vampire part, though, definitely more creative than I actually am. I jump onto the treadmill and run until I can hardly breathe. The entire time, I'm listening for the sounds of life in the apartment. But I hear none. It's still silent when I get off the treadmill and go for the weights. I throw some music on to stifle the silence and get a full workout in. An hour after I woke up, I wrap it up and wander out into the hallway. Aries? I call out. I don't find him in the next bedroom over, and the bed doesn't look slept in. I find my way to the kitchen, and to my surprise, there is a spread of pastries waiting there, as well as a cup of coffee. Valiant. It isn't my typical breakfast by any means, but it was thoughtful. So I down a bear claw. I next find the fridge fully stocked. I opt for a glass of orange juice to wash everything down. There's still no sign of my fake fiancé when I head back down the hall. I fish out my shower supplies and jump in. An array of body jets and elaborate shower heads greets me. I take it in with a disbelieving smile. 25 minutes later, I'm showered, hair done, makeup in place, and dressed in black jeans, a black tank top, and black combat boots. If I'm going to play the part of a vampire's fiancé, I might as well dress for it. And just as I step out of the bedroom, Aries stops in place, obviously on his way to the room. I don't miss it when his eyes drop down the length of me, taking in every black-clad inch of me. The little smile that curls in the corner of his mouth is enough to make my heart trip. You ready to put everything in motion? He asks. Yep, I answer, slipping my phone into my back pocket. Where were you this morning? We head out the door, and Aries locks it behind us, keeping an eye on my father's place, watching his comings and goings. Does he live in Manhattan? I question as we step into the elevator. Aries nods. He's in Greenwich, he says as we descend. For now, at least. He's always buying new properties, and when he gets his hands on one he particularly likes, he'll take up residence. Last year, he was in Soho. The year before that, he was in Hudson Yards. Of course, these are all some of the most expensive places to live in the city. You said Augustus is keeping tabs on you, I say. You aren't worried he's going to know you're spying on him? It wouldn't be anything new, Aries confesses. The elevator doors slide open, and we walk out. Immediately, Aries slides on some sunglasses. They're fashionable looking, but I note how they fully encase his eyes in a subtle way, effectively blocking out all the brilliant sunlight pouring through the windows into the lobby. Aries gives Laszlo a tip of his head as we walk by, who returns the gesture. I've been back in Manhattan for 2 years. I haven't stopped keeping an eye on that man the whole time. Augustus won't think anything of it. We aim back down that hall and let out into the parking garage. Where were you for the year you left? Aries offers me a pleased look as he takes the helmet and extends it to me again. You're asking all the right questions, Vengeance. We might just pull this off. I take the helmet and yank it down on my head, praying I don't end up with helmet hair all day. Once more, Aries helps me strap it on, adjusting it to fit just right. I went to Portland for about 8 months, made some friends there, spent 2 months in Costa Rica rethinking my life, and then I bought this bike in Texas and took another 2 months slowly making my way back to New York. I want to ask him more questions, but we're ready to go, so when Aries straddles the bike, I climb on behind him, making sure my feet properly find the pegs. Knowing what's going to happen if I don't, I wrap my arms around his waist, feeling secure enough not to fall off. The engine roars to life, and Aries carefully backs us out of the parking space. Expertly, he maneuvers the bike until we pull back out onto the road. Just before he rolls out, he asks over his shoulder for my work address. I rattle it off, and off he takes. We weave through traffic, traveling down the length of Central Park before plunging down into the depths of Hell's Kitchen. I'm trying to rehearse what to say as we head toward the gym, but I'm not entirely sure how I make this convincing. I've worked at Valor Combat Sports since I graduated high school. Tate Kelso has been my boss for 2 years now. I might despise the man, but he's not completely oblivious to my life, not like my roommates. There's a sinking feeling in my stomach that tells me this isn't going to go particularly well. Anxiety pitches higher in my blood when the building comes into view. Aries slows and then comes to a stop at the curb. My limbs feel stiff, my movements jerky as I climb off from the back of the bike. Your boss going to be a problem? Aries asks as he dismounts and takes the helmet as I remove it. Your heart rate is going crazy. I flush at that. Damn vampire. Most likely, I say, as I nervously run my hands through my hair. Aries simply makes a noise I can't quite interpret as he secures the helmet, and then he slips his hand into mine, sending my heart straight against my ribcage. He pulls me after him through the doors. The scent is the most familiar in my life as we step inside. It's at once home and the source of an exceptional amount of pain, all at the same time. It's the same place I came to after the worst day of my life. It's where I learned how to fight, where I had my first kiss. It's where I thought I'd find my own path in life. And it's where I lost it all, where he walked all over me. There are 2 rings when you first walk in. To the left, there are heavy bags and speed bags, all the stuff you need to train as a boxer. To the right is our MMA cage. Straight ahead, there is a hall with 5 doors branching off of it. 1 leads to my classroom. 1 is the weight room. 2 open to the locker and shower rooms, and the last leads to Tate's office. There are a dozen people here, even though it's late morning now. I recognize every one of them, all the amateurs, all the trainers. Garrett, you seen Tate this morning? I call out to the trainer I've known since I was 13. Back in his office, Garrett calls out. What are you doing here this early? Got some shit to take care of, I answer, as at home here as anywhere in my life. So just another Monday, hey? He calls with a chuckle, as he holds up the punch mitts. He glances away just once, though, his eyes going straight to my fingers, interlaced with Aries. I don't answer him as I steer both of us toward the office. You've spent more than just work time here, Aries notes aloud, but I don't get a chance to confirm because I knock on the office door before pushing it open. You're not on until tonight, Tate says, barely glancing up at me from his paperwork. I know, I acknowledge, but something's come up. I'm going to have to take some time off work. That grabs his attention. He finally looks up, but it isn't me he looks at. His gaze immediately locks on Aries. He looks him up and down, taking in the tattoos, the piercings, the dangerous set of his jaw, and the fact that he hasn't removed his sunglasses despite being inside. Aries Hunt, he says coolly as he steps forward, his inked hand outstretched. Lana's fiancé. Tate's eyes narrow, and he shakes Aries' hand automatically. Fiancé. The word comes out like it doesn't have any meaning, and his eyes slide over to mine without moving his head. The fuck is this con talking about? Wow, judge much? Let's not pretend we're friends, Tate, I say, all of my insides bristling. Just because you aren't part of it doesn't mean I don't have a life outside this building. And don't you dare call him that again. Aries squeezes my hand, and I'm not exactly sure what its meaning is. Appreciation? Support? Trying to calm me down? Some like keeping private things private, Aries says. Don't assume you know anything about anyone, and your life will be much simpler. Tate is sizing Aries up, which, if I didn't know any better, I'd say they'd be on par with one another. Tate is 6'2", the same height I'd guess Aries is. He's well-built, muscled, and solid. Tate spent 5 days out of 7 here before his hostile takeover. He can take on pretty much anyone who walks through the front doors. But Aries is more than meets the eye. Why do you need the time? Tate finally asks as he looks back over at me. I've got some in-laws to meet, I say, going for as close to the truth as I can manage. And wedding plans to make. Life is going to be a little complicated for a few weeks. And you think I should just let you out of work because you come in here with someone you say you're engaged to? Come on, Lana. You're not a very good liar. I hate the look on his face, the one that says he thinks I'm stupid. I hate that he's seeing through this so damn easy. Lana's lips always taste like strawberries and kiwi. My heart jumps up my throat as Aries steps forward. He rests his hands on the surface of Tate's desk, but every inch of him looks poised to rip the man's throat out. He leans in close, his tone calm and deadly sounding. She has 2 little freckles on her left ass cheek. She prefers dark chocolate to milk. She hates Monday mornings more than just about anything, and she makes the most incredible noises when she comes. When you know any of these details, then you can call her bluff. Shit. I feel like my entire body has gone red. I press my thighs tighter together, and something in my lower belly tightens. Aries' words reach a very deep, very primal part of me that's been dormant for a long time. Tate's eyebrows rise, and he sits back in his chair, putting some distance between the two of them. And finally, something that looks a bit like fear alights in his eyes. His survival instincts were never honed. He might not have sensed the danger Aries is when we first walked in, but he certainly senses it now. What about your classes? Tate asks, trying to fight the intimidation he feels. I will message everyone and tell them I have some personal stuff to take care of, I offer. It won't be the end of the world if class is canceled for 2 weeks. Except the money I'll lose, Tate says with angry annoyance. Aries reaches into his back pocket and takes out his wallet. I can't even imagine the cash this man must carry around all the time. But he extracts another stack of hundreds and drops them down on the desk. That ought to cover it. So do the human thing. Give Lana the time off, and leave her the hell alone when she comes back. Without waiting for an answer, Aries turns. He takes my hand again and walks us out the door. I spare one glance back, catching Tate's eyes. There's a whole storm there. Anger, annoyance. He's definitely debating firing me, but he's also stark still, his entire body tight, coiling as far away from Aries as possible. I note that, technically, Tate never said I could have the time off, but he also didn't argue with Aries. I don't think many would have the balls. I feel like I should offer a goodbye to all the other trainers. I've known most of them for years. They've been the closest thing I've had to family for a while, but I don't want to acknowledge this feeling like I'll never come back here again. So I don't do anything but wave to Garrett as Aries and I head out the door. We might need to take a week, Aries says, as he takes the helmet from the bike. I feel his gaze fix on me behind his shades as I take it from him. A few days might not be enough to get our shit straight to sell this. I nod in agreement. And it's not an easy sell when no one has seen us together. We're going to have to work this into our backstory. Aries nods. I pull the helmet on and climb onto the back of the bike after him. He points us toward Midtown, and just a few minutes later, he pulls into a parking garage. I climb off, and again, he takes my hand as we head back out onto the street level. I probably shouldn't like the feel of his hand in mine, but I do. I like its warmth. I like its size. I like the confidence in it. I even like that with the tattoos that cover not just his hand, but every surface of him that I can see, most people are giving us a wide berth. I'm not sure what that says about me. So, do you want to tell me about the connection you have to that place? Aries asks. I'm not even paying attention to where we're going. He walks swiftly, confidently, and I just follow. I swallow once. I know Aries needs to know details, but not every detail of my past is a place I want to go. There are things there I have no desire to relive. My dad used to own it, I begin, sifting through what I'm willing to share. He inherited it from his father once he passed. I was about 5 when that happened, so the gym has always been a part of my life. I get the feeling your dad was hands-on with that operation, Aries says. He looks over at me, and I feel his intense gaze studying my face. But I can't look at him right now. Not when I'm falling back through the past. I nod. My father was a trainer, a boxer. He was really good, too. Made some money when he was young, before he took over. He loved working with younger boxers. Honestly, he didn't like running the gym that much. He wasn't much of a businessman. He was all about teaching, about connecting with young fighters. He started training me when I was about 4. He made me think I could take on anyone in the world. I'm pretty sure you could, Aries says. I finally spare a glance in his direction. He's still looking at me, and his expression tells me he means it. I was good, I admit. I won lots of competitions. I definitely leaned more toward the MMA stuff than the boxing. My dad had all my trophies set up in the living room, but I was always small. Being 5'4" and never being able to bulk up enough limited me, which was fine. I never had dreams of going pro or anything. What did you want to do? Aries asks. I shrug. It doesn't sound ambitious enough, but I always just kind of wanted to do what my dad did, run the gym. Valor Combat Sports was always this great place where people came together. I just thought I'd work there, teach classes, and someday I'd take over, just like my dad did. What happened? I let out a hard, frustrated sigh. Like I said, my dad wasn't the best businessman. He never made all that much money because he never charged people enough, or he got taken advantage of. My dad died 2 years ago. When I tried to take charge of the gym, like his will said, I found out he was buried beneath quite a bit of debt. Until I paid it off, I couldn't take over. Tate Kelso undercut you, Aries states. I nod. He'd been a patron at the gym for 3 years, and he was always trying to talk to my dad about how the place could be better. Their visions weren't the same, but Tate had come from some money, so when he heard what had happened, he paid off the debts, and the gym became his. Damn, Aries says with a shake of his head. He snaked it right out from under you. I nod. I lost my mom when I was a teenager. I literally lived at the gym. There's an apartment above it. I spent the majority of my life there. And then to find out I couldn't hold on to it, I lost the place my dad loved most at the same time I lost him. Tate even kicked me out of my home. I've been living in that shithole you moved me out of ever since. How'd your parents die? He asks gently as we cross the street with the herd of traffic. My stomach tightens. I've only ever talked to Ophelia about this. I don't have many other friends, and everyone else I talk to works at the gym, and they all know exactly what happened. Opening these wounds is not something I do. Ever. It was a training accident with my dad, I explain, keeping it simple. This guy he'd been working with, Steven, accidentally got my dad in the head. It really was an accident, but there were other health issues we couldn't see. Dad had a stroke. He died on the way to the hospital. Aries curses under his breath. I'm so sorry, Lana. I nod in appreciation. The weight of it all bites at the back of my eyes, but I refuse to let them well or redden. My mother was killed in a home invasion. I don't like to talk about it much. You don't have to, Aries assures me and squeezes my hand. Not everyone has to know all the details. That's all you have to share with me if you want. I sniff once, even though no tears have broken through. Thanks. Sorry you picked such a trauma-rich fake fiancé. I chuckle through the pain. And it works. Aries gives a soft laugh as well. Trust me, Vengeance. You're not the only one with some heavy shit in this relationship. But we don't get to dive into any more details because just then, I realize we're on Fifth Avenue, and he pulls a door open for me. With a hand at the small of my back, Aries guides me inside. I stop in place. The entire interior is a glittering, sparkling show of opulence. The floors are polished black marble. The walls are gold with endless mirrors hanging everywhere. Dozens of crystal chandeliers hang overhead. Even the air smells rich. There are display cases set up all over the place, and there are diamonds everywhere. But surprisingly, considering the never-ending crowds outside, the place is empty, save 3 waiting employees. Welcome to Vogasar, says a woman with black, blunt-cut hair. Despite her words, she wears a judgmental expression. Her eyes scan up and down Aries, ready to call the cops on him. But I am afraid we are closed for a private event. I realize then the life Aries chose when he decided on all those tattoos and piercings. I called earlier, Aries says. He pulls me in closer, his hand wrapping around my waist. With every inch it drops, my heart rate rises. Mr. Hunt? She asks, her tone doubtful and surprised. Her brows disappear into her blunt bangs. That would be me, he answers, a very satisfied smile pulling on the corners of his mouth. And my gorgeous fiancée, Lana. Once more, her eyes look him over before they flick to me, evaluating if we can possibly be the people Aries is saying. Aries called ahead and closed this whole place down so just the two of us could have it? We're delighted to help you on this beautiful occasion, another woman says as she steps forward. She not so subtly hip bumps the other woman out of the way. If I had to guess, I'd say this woman is the supervisor. She screams ass kisser with that black business dress, perfect blonde hair, and makeup that looks as if it was done by a professional. My name is Carissa. It was me you spoke to on the phone, Mr. Hunt. How about we get started? That sounds perfect, he says, giving a very smug glance to the first woman. He places a hand on the small of my back and encourages me forward, following Carissa. Have you given much thought as to what cut of diamond you like? The saleswoman asks as she steps behind the counter. She unlocks one of the displays and pulls out a velvet cushion. Sitting atop it are a dozen massive diamonds. Kitten, Aries encourages, when I stare at the jewels with wide cartoon eyes. My mouth opens, but I can't gather my thoughts enough to form words. I've seen plenty of wedding rings in my life. So many women wear them. There are pictures online. I have a pretty good idea of what a normal ring looks like. These diamonds are all way, way bigger than normal. I really don't know yet, I say, scrambling to seem like a functional woman who totally expected to be here today. This all still seems like a dream. I've hardly had 2 seconds to think about it. Aw, Carissa coos. Whirlwind romance, huh? But look at you two. If I had a man who looked at me like that, I'd say yes in a heartbeat, too. My eyes rip up to Aries, and he offers a smile. The first full one I've seen on him yet. and my heart stops. His teeth are snow white and perfectly straight. They damn near look fake, and a smile transforms his entire face. He looks younger. He looks less like the vampire he is. And despite the fact that I can't see his eyes, considering he's still wearing his sunglasses, he does indeed look like a man who is crazy in love. Yes, yes, yes. My heart screams without thought. An awkward sounding chuckle comes out of my lips. Do better, Lana. Something in the back of my brain says. And so I lift a hand, caressing the side of his face, and soften the look in my eyes. It didn't take much convincing. Because, no, it really didn't. Not to save my best friend, not when my fake fiancé looks like this. Aries covers my hand with his, pulling it across his face until his lips press into my palm with a kiss that scorches my entire body. Carissa makes a needy noise. I already can't wait to see your wedding pictures. I have a feeling you're going to melt the camera with all that heat, though. Come on, I'll show you some options. I'm pretty sure Aries is going to melt my clothes off with the way he's looking at me, but he just gives a smile, one that touches his eyes, and he wraps a hand around my waist again as we walk down the display case. Maybe it's the fact that Aries is a vampire, but he's watching with focused intensity the entire time I look at ring after ring with Carissa. And he's largely quiet, other than to say things like, "You like that one, kitten?" Or, "No, bigger." Aries, I hiss in a low whisper at one point when I see a price tag that is 7 figures. We both know what this is. Don't waste your money. My last name is Hunt, Vengeance, he says as he leans in close, his lips brushing the shell of my ear. Instantly, goosebumps flash over my entire body. Trust me, there's a certain level of expectation that comes with it. Bigger, he says, raising his volume slightly as Carissa begins to pull out a display. She abruptly puts it back and reaches for another instead. Round, square, marquise, princess. My head is spinning with the names. I certainly never expected to learn every cut of diamond this week. I try on dozens of rings, and Aries watches intensely with every one. But something flutters in my chest when Carissa pulls out one particular set in its own display. Radiant cut. It looks truly massive. It's set on a simple band, but it has a double wedding band that accompanies it. Square diamonds encrust the wedding band, a sharp contrast with the simple engagement band. And it feels like magic when I slide it on, and it fits perfectly. Platinum DFL 5-carat center diamond, 1-carat wedding band, Carissa says, her tone nearly reverent. I don't even know what half of those terms mean, but from her tone, I know I don't want to see the price tag. The car outside is for you, Lana. I look over my shoulder when Aries speaks. There is indeed a black SUV waiting at the curb. It's going to take you down the street. They've got instructions to help you. I'll catch up with you in an hour. I thought, I start, confused. We're all done here, Vengeance, Aries says, his tone cool and even, but there's something in his countenance that is confident and a little mischievous. I don't know what the hell is going on, but I take the ring off, laying it on the velvet cushion in front of me. Thank you for your help, Carissa. It was all my pleasure, she coos, and she means it. Guess money can buy you anything, even rose-colored glasses for strangers. I give Aries one last glance, still confused, but I head to the door, which the woman with the blunt hair opens for me. As soon as I step outside, a man in a suit exits the vehicle. He's massive and sturdy, like a mountain. His brown hair is buzzed short. His hands are like hams. And the fact that he's wearing some very, very, very good coverage sunglasses tells me he's likely a vampire. Ms. Lana, I'm Billings. I reach out and shake his hand. Nice to meet you. Right this way, Miss Lana. He opens the back seat door for me and waits. A small spike of fear shoots through me. I can handle myself pretty damn well, but Billings is a Goliath and a vampire. But Aries sent him for me, and I have to trust Aries. So I climb into the back seat. Moments later, we're rolling down Fifth Avenue. We drive 3 blocks, a distance I could have easily walked, before he stops in front of a shop with a name so French-sounding I have no idea how to pronounce it. Billings exits and opens my door for me once again. Mrs. Lamont will assist you inside. I simply give a nod of thanks and pull the door open. This place looks nearly as opulent as the jewelry store, except there are racks of clothing I'm scared to breathe around. You must be Lana, a voice asks as it approaches from the back. A woman steps out, dressed like she's ready to go to a burlesque opera. Her accent matches the origins of the store. I am, I answer, feeling uncomfortable and completely out of my league. Are you Mrs. Lamont? I am, she says with a bob of her head. Mr. Hunt asked me to help you with your new wardrobe. For a moment, I'm tempted to be offended or judge him, but I have to remind myself what he said at the jewelry store. My last name is Hunt, Vengeance. Trust me, there's a certain level of expectation that comes with it. Bigger. Thank you, I offer instead. And I notice that, once again, there are no other customers in the store. Mrs. Lamont guides me back to a private fitting room that is as big as my new closet, and that's saying something. Wraparound mirrors take up one end of the room. There's a platform set up in the center of the room, like I'd expect to see in a bridal store. A singular chair sits opposite the mirrors. A rack of clothes is already placed in the room, pre-picked at Aries' instructions. One by one, Mrs. Lamont has me begin trying items on. Expertly, she evaluates them on me, and she sorts the items onto two different racks, keep or discard. Skirts, tops, dresses, pants, even shoes of every type imaginable. I'm smoothing my hands over my hips, looking at myself in the mirror as I wear a silky red dress when the bell at the front door dings. Just 3 seconds later, I hear the sound of footsteps, and Aries walks in. He takes a deep breath through his nose. Even though I can't see his eyes behind those shades, I feel them on me, down my hips, over my thighs, before rising back up over every single inch of me. Do I make a decent Barbie doll? I ask, arching an eyebrow at him. I never expected I'd appreciate dress-up play, he confesses, not a bit of shame in his words. That one is going in the yes pile, Mrs. Lamont. Of course, Mr. Hunt, she says with the dip of her head. We're about done here. Just 2 more things. And I don't know if I'm horrified or thrilled when Aries walks to that lone chair and sinks down into it. He leans back, his legs spread casually, his shoulders taking up the bulk of the seat. He looks so damn appreciative and smug. I wish it didn't send a tingling wave of pleasure and satisfaction up my spine. You're awfully presumptuous, I call him out as Mrs. Lamont unzips the dress. I refuse to blush as the fabric slips down my body, revealing my black strapless bra. My body heats as it falls past my hips, showing my black underwear. I swallow once as I step free of the silken fabric and look back up to meet Aries' eyes. He watches every move I make with rapt attention. Why would I still be shy around my fiancée, Vengeance? He asks, playing stupid. I flip him my middle finger, unsure how to take it, how unabashed he is. I accept the pants Mrs. Lamont hands me. I step into them, appreciating how perfectly they hug my hips and waist. Next, I pull on the form-fitting red top I'm given. You approve? Mrs. Lamont asks. Not me, Aries. Aries nods. She'll wear that one out. My driver will load everything up. You can charge it all to the card I gave you over the phone. Yes, Mr. Hunt, she says with a very satisfied smile and a nod. I wonder just how much all of this is going to ring up to be. No, actually, I really don't want to know. Do I fit the part yet? I ask as I pull some shoes on, hopping for a moment to keep my balance. No one will question you, Aries says as he watches me walk up to him. I still feel it as he shamelessly scrapes his eyes up the length of me. You're just about ready to step into this nightmare, Vengeance. He climbs out of his chair and aims for the front door. Thank you, Mrs. Lamont. You're very welcome, Mr. Hunt, she calls after us. Outside, I find Aries' bike parked at the curb, very illegally. Guess when you're a vampire, you think you can get away with anything. I just shake my head and climb back onto the bike behind Aries. Chapter 6. We park back in the garage of our new building. In the lobby, Billings is waiting with all my bags. I blush at the absurdity of it all. But Aries simply takes them from his driver and heads for the elevator. Since we're supposed to know each other on a deep level, I'm just going to say it, I announce as we step into the elevator, which feels crowded with all the bags. I grew up pretty damn poor. We didn't have money. I've never made much in my life. So you just dropping all this money? It's weird for me. I feel Aries' eyes on me. As if he knows there's more coming, he doesn't say anything. I've been financially independent since my dad died. The struggle has been real, but I've been making it work. But you just dropping serious money when it comes to me? I shake my head. I'll admit, it makes me uncomfortable. I don't want you thinking I'm just secretly thinking I hit the jackpot. The elevator opens, but neither of us steps out immediately. I've never had to want for anything in my life, Lana, Aries says, and when the elevator doors start closing, he throws his hand out, bags and all, stopping it. I know, that's an advantage of privilege. All of this in the last 2 days, it doesn't mean much to me. I appreciate what you're saying. But don't for 1 second think I'm doing you a bigger favor than you're doing me. The money means nothing, but bringing you into this hostile world, that's the real ask. I swallow once, holding his intense gaze. I think we see this in very different ways, but all that tells me is just how truly ignorant I am of what I'm about to walk into. Okay, I say simply, just so long as you get that I'm really not a gold digger. It never crossed my mind, Vengeance, he says sincerely, and we both step out of the elevator. So, I know you grew up rich, I say as I unlock the door and push it open for him. We walk through the entryway and into the living room. The drapes are drawn, leaving the room dim. You have a sister, and your father is some kind of tycoon that borders on mafia status. I think it's your turn to start spilling more details about your past, fiancé. Aries sets the bags on the kitchen island before he aims for the living room. He pulls his sunglasses off, letting out a relieved sigh. He sets them down on the coffee table and rubs his eyes, before pressing his thumb and forefinger into the inner parts of his eyes. Just how much pain has he been in all day? He never gave an indication today while we were out. But as he sinks down into a chair, he looks like he has a massive migraine. Can I get you something? I ask without thinking, my brows furrowed. Water? Some aspirin? Aries looks up at me from beneath his dark eyelashes, a hint of a smile pulling on his mouth. I'll be all right, Vengeance. This will fade in a few minutes, but thank you. His tone makes me wonder if anyone has ever taken care of him. The way he's looking at me makes me wonder if he's wondering if anyone's ever taken care of me. I just nod and curl up on the couch I occupied last night. My mother, Annika Hunt, didn't know what Augustus was when they started dating. Aries begins. He slouches down in his chair, lacing his fingers together and resting them on his chest. He told her when she let him know she was pregnant. She freaked, tried to break things off, which Augustus kind of allowed. I don't like the way that sounds. Controlling asshole. But he kept tabs on her, so he knew when she went to the hospital in labor. Aries continues. She found a little sympathy and let him in for my birth. The bastard was sneaky, though. Wrote my name down on the birth certificate before she even had the chance to wipe the sweat from her brow. It suits you, I say, raising one eyebrow. A little smile in the corner of his mouth tells me Aries agrees, but he shrugs one shoulder. She was angry enough about it all. She took me home and cut him out, and the bastard seemed okay with that, at least for the time being. I wouldn't be useful to him for a few years. That's disgusting, I say, the ick spreading through my entire body. Aries nods. My mother was the heiress to one of the biggest pharmaceutical companies in the country and was already managing everything on her own by that time. She wasn't hurting for money and wanted nothing to do with Augustus's fortune. She lived her life here in Manhattan, but she really wanted me to have a sibling. She went to a sperm bank, and when I was 3, my sister Florence was born. The only person he's ever loved besides his mother. That's what he told me. Growing up, my mother never talked about my father. I didn't even know his name. He didn't come looking for me. Mom wanted to pretend he didn't exist, wanted to pretend I'd be nothing but human forever. But when I was 14, I got curious. I started digging for who he was. Was that a mistake? I ask, curiosity making my words bold. Aries shrugs again. It wouldn't have mattered. Augustus was keeping tabs on me, biding his time. He had no interest in being a traditional father. One way or another, when I was old enough, he would have come after me. Instead, I learned his name and went and found him. Did you know what he was? I ask, my brows furrowing. Not at first. Augustus was pleased to have contact now that I was older. He started teaching me about his business, about real estate. He gave me my first $1 million to invest when I was 15 and was pretty damn proud when I doubled it before I turned 16. But he didn't tell me what he was until I was 18. And he advised me on what age I should end my life so I'd resurrect and stop aging. Shit, I say, shaking my head. Most 18-year-olds are just starting to deal with the looming financial responsibility of striking out on their own. Aries had to contemplate when he should take his own life and trust that he'd really come back as a vampire. Yeah, Aries says, his tone a little dramatic. I had years to think about my death, to wonder if Augustus was telling the truth, that I'd really come back from the dead as something else. In the meantime, I went to college after graduating, got the degree in business he determined I should have, and I helped him grow his empire while starting my own. So much wealth. Augustus was wealthy. Annika was wealthy. And at such a young age, Aries became wealthy all on his own. Florence was always the brilliant one, though, Aries says, changing directions. She was always so damn smart. She graduated high school when she was just 15 years old and immediately started college. She finished her doctorate by the time she was 22. Is that even possible? I ask in amazement. It is when you have an eidetic memory. And you immediately understand everything you set your mind to, Aries says. She was our mother's protege and was already furthering the company by leaps and bounds after just a year working there. But then, our mother went missing. The circumstances were suspicious. She was found in Harlem 4 weeks later, dead. Anxiety pitches in my blood, and I can't help but think of my own mother. I'm so sorry. Aries nods in appreciation. We found out she'd been taken by someone who thought they could get money out of her. Guess it went south. They never reached out for ransom money, which was stupid because Florence and I would have paid anything to get her back. I can't imagine how awful that must feel, knowing you would have cooperated with her captor but never got the opportunity, and then they lost their mother because of it. 3 weeks later, I decided it was time to see if Augustus was telling the truth. Aries continues. I was afraid whoever had killed our mother was going to come after Florence, too. So I ended it. Resurrected 4 days later, just like my father said I would. I could protect my sister far more effectively as a vampire. The morbid side of me is wildly curious how he did it, how Aries met the end of his mortal life, but that isn't the kind of question you should ask. Within 2 months of resurrecting, Augustus started pressuring me to start having my own children. He wanted to make our family line stronger. I'd known about my half-siblings for a while, but it hit different when he was asking me to go find some women to knock up to produce my own little heirs. My stomach turns. I let him know in no uncertain terms that I had no intention of trying to make him more heirs. Augustus doesn't like being told no. So, as I told you, it eventually grew so bad that I left after 3 years of that bullshit. I knew Florence was safe, so I took off. And I haven't talked to Augustus since. But that's about to change, I say, all the pieces finally starting to fall into place. With a fiancé at my side, going along with the lie that I'm ready to have my own children, that's about to change. Aries' dark eyes are fixed on me. I let out a hard breath, my eyes falling to the floor. That was all a lot. And while our pasts, the way we grew up, were so different, we also have some crazy things in common, things that most people will never understand. Both of our mothers were murdered. And as I look back up at Aries, I feel like he carries around the same bitterness and general mistrust for the world that I do. We've never talked about dating history, I say, shifting the direction of the conversation. Did you never have any other girlfriends that gave Augustus hope? Aries shrugs. I had one girlfriend in high school. We dated for most of my junior and senior years. If I'm being honest, I always knew she was with me for the money. Ouch, I say, cringing. He just shrugs again. We kept each other company. I was never in love with her, so it ran its course. There was another woman a year before I resurrected. Mila was sweet, good. She was an incredible person. But He shakes his head, his eyes fixing on the floor. What? I encourage. These are the kinds of details we need to know about each other. I always felt like I was tainting her, Aries finally admits, his eyes rising to meet mine. My world was dark and dangerous. There are always ulterior motives when it comes to my world. Mila, she wasn't cut out for it, and I didn't want to drag her into a life she didn't belong in. I can't tell. From the look in his eyes, I can't tell if Aries was in love with Mila or not. I see conflict there. I don't question that. But love, I can't really tell. What about you, Vengeance? He asks, clearly done talking about his own dating history. I take a deep breath, my mind falling back into the past. Nothing in high school. I was dealing with too much trauma for that. After I graduated, I started dating this boxer at the gym, and it was nice, but it didn't really go anywhere because he got transferred for work only 2 months later. Last year, I started dating this guy who used to live in my building, and honestly, I don't really know why, because he always kind of gave me the ick. I guess I just wanted some experience, you know? Aries nods like he gets that. But that was doomed from the beginning. We were only together for about 6 weeks when I found out he was cheating on me with this woman who lived across the hall from me. And the craziest part is that I didn't care that much. It was actually kind of nice to have a reason to end it. We're a couple of winners in the love department, aren't we? Aries says with a sad little smile. I huff a laugh. Glad to hear I'm not the only clueless one. Aries shakes his head at the ridiculousness. Now, how about our story? I question. We should probably start from the beginning, Aries says. He slides up in his seat, sitting straight once again. He already looks like he's recovered from his headache. How did we meet? I've been thinking about it, I answer. I think we say we met online. We talked there for months before we ever met in person, which is why no one has ever seen us together until recently. But we live in the same city, Aries points out. That would make more sense if this was a long-distance thing. I shake my head. I have trust issues, I say with a shrug. I thought you sounded interesting, but I know the dangers of meeting up with strangers you meet online. So I told you I was going to need some time. We talked online until I felt safe enough to meet up in person. Fair enough, Aries says with a nod of his head. And by the time we finally met in person, we'd spent months talking already, which put the in-person relationship at an accelerated time frame. I think it works, I say, chewing on my lip as I think it through. We only met in person a month ago. That's only 4 weeks. I think we can get away with it if people question it. It's not a very long amount of time. People are going to call us crazy, Aries says with an arched brow. Getting engaged after a few months of online talking and 1 month of being around each other in person? People do crazier shit all the time, I iterate. Look at Las Vegas. People get married after knowing each other one night. A few months of knowing each other isn't completely unbelievable. Besides, we just play the madly in love card. I mean, Carissa sure seemed to buy it. Aries stares at me silently for a few moments, contemplating it all. He's the one who's the good actor. Maybe he doesn't realize just how well he's selling this. I think you're right. It's our best bet, Aries concedes. But we need the little details figured out. Where online did we meet? I contemplate it for a good long moment. A dating app would be the easy go-to, but I've never been on one of those, and depending on if anyone digs into our facts, it probably wouldn't be hard to find that wasn't the truth. Same for a wrong number, right guy kind of situation. There won't be any kind of text history between us, or call logs. I think Snap Talk is our safest bet, I finally conclude. We found each other through some tangential connection and started talking more and more regularly. I don't have Snap Talk. Aries pokes at the plan. We both deleted it when we decided to commit to a relationship, I say with a shrug. That app is nothing but trouble, so it wouldn't be that weird of a thing to do once you get really serious. There are other ways to talk to people. Aries taps his thumb on the armrest, thinking. I watch him closely, knowing I have to learn his mannerisms. He looks away while he's thinking, and I can practically see the gears turning in his head as he considers. It's not as strong as I'd like, but I think it's our best bet. But maybe we need to say we talked online for 6 months before meeting in person. The longer the time, the more believable. I nod. That sounds good to me. What was our first date? It seems likely someone will ask that. Aries taps his thumb again. If you weren't sure you could trust me, it was somewhere public. And 4 weeks ago, that would have been the beginning of May. And a big one here, I nearly cut him off as the thought occurs to me. Did I know you're a vampire before we met in person? I'd say yes. Aries surprises me when he answers quickly. I'd told you, but you didn't necessarily believe me. I consider that. I try to imagine it for real. If some guy I was interested in and had been talking to for months had told me he was actually a vampire. In real life, I probably would have thought he was nuts and ghosted him. But for the sake of our story, I let the thought marinate until I can find an outcome that sounds plausible. I told you I'd never been to the top of the Rockefeller Center, so you took me there for our first date. And then we got dinner. Aries looks up at me. You ever actually been? I shake my head. Good thing you're already dressed up, Aries says as a smile starts pulling on his lips. We'll go as soon as the sun's down. Chapter 8. I hear her scream. As I run through the dimly lit hallway, Ophelia's terrified screams reverberate in my brain. My legs pump harder, faster. She screams again, and I hear the sound of flesh meeting flesh. Fight back, I mentally beg her. I don't slow as I reach the door at the end of the hall. I turn my right shoulder to it and barrel straight into it. It splinters as I explode through it, and I stumble into the room. Ophelia gasps, scrambling back on the bed. She's wearing nothing but her underthings, and her wrists are bound. Blood drips from her neck and her nose. She's covered in a random constellation of bruises. And a faceless man turns toward me, a primordial growl raging up his throat. I get half a second to pull the gun from the back of my pants before he pounces. Before I can get a shot off, his body lands on top of me, and I jerk up from the bed with a yell. My right arm is extended, but there's no gun in my hand. There's no faceless man, and no Ophelia bound on the bed. Lana? I jump at the worried call from down the hall and flinch harder when, less than a second later, Aries barrels his way into the bedroom. His eyes are brilliant red, his nostrils flared. His eyes scan the room, and the tension in his body says he's ready to tear the world apart. What is it? He growls. I take a shallow breath, quickly followed by another. No, nothing. I barely get the words out. It was just a bad dream. I found Ophelia. There was a man there. I shake my head, wheeling the image away because the thought that it might be real makes me want to spiral. Some of that tension seeps out of Aries, and I feel his eyes shift to me. He's quiet for a long moment. I don't know what he's thinking. I focus on blacking out the dream, erasing it bit by bit. With my eyes squeezed closed, my hands shaking, I force myself to take slower breaths. In through my nose, out through my mouth. We're going to find her, Lana, Aries says softly. I swear. I take 3 more breaths, embracing the numb darkness filling my mind, and finally nod my head. Okay. There are another few moments of uncertain silence. How do you comfort your fake fiancée, the woman you don't really know, yet have kissed the life out of? We're supposed to be at my sister's place in an hour, he says uncertainly. I can let her know we're going to be a little bit late. No, I shake my head and climb out of the bed. I'm fine. It was just a dream. It's over. I'm getting ready now. He meets my eyes, a look of uncertainty on his face. But I don't wait for him to argue as I walk into the bathroom, ignoring the fact that I'm wearing nothing but underwear and a tank top. Today's agenda is to meet Aries' sister. According to Aries, there's no way anyone would believe this if I hadn't met this sister, the one person in the world Aries is closest with. She's been told what's going on, and Aries trusts her to no end. I stalk into the closet and pull on the first things my hands find: a black skirt that hits mid-thigh, and a yellow ribbed top that hugs my body. Standing in front of the mirror, I take in my own reflection. My hair is a wild mess. My skin is pale, and there are dark shadows beneath my eyes. But it's nothing compared to how Ophelia looked in my dream. I know it's just a dream. I know that wasn't real. But what if the truth of what she's going through is worse? What if she's really being abused and used like that? What if she's dead? This is taking too damn long. I'm sorry, Ophelia. I think into the ether. I'm coming. We need to speed this up. I dab on some makeup, making myself look less of a zombie. I tame my hair back into a knot at the back of my head. And when I look back at my reflection when I'm finished, I finally see someone who looks the part of the billionaire's fiancée. This woman is put together. This woman has never struggled to pay the grocery bill. This woman has never been talked down to by anyone in her life. I look down at the massive rock on my finger, where it has stayed put since Aries put it there 2 days ago. Is this thing going to turn me into a different person? Would that be so terrible? I walk out of the bedroom and into the living area to find Aries on the phone. But the moment he sees me, he freezes in place, just for a second, his eyes scraping over the whole of me. I'll take interviews on Monday, Aries says, sounding surprisingly professional. Give me 5 candidates. He doesn't wait for whoever is on the other end to respond before he hangs up. Once again, his eyes shamelessly take every inch of me in. What do you say? Can I pass for the fiancé of Aries Hunt? I ask, lowering my chin and looking at him from beneath my lashes. Instead of answering me, Aries steps forward, sliding his hand into mine, and he guides me to the entryway where a huge gold-framed mirror hangs on the wall. He walks to where the 2 of us are centered, every bit of us in the length of it. What do you say, Vengeance? Aries asks as I see him look down at me in the mirror's reflection. Do we look like we fit together? My mind goes somewhere far too dirty, considering this man is a stranger. But the heat in his gaze as he looks at me, the hunger I see there, makes my lower stomach tighten. I swallow once and actually look at the 2 of us in the mirror. Aries is all danger and darkness. Black on black, he looks the bad boy and the billionaire right now. His hair is wild in the most purposeful way, those curls teasing my fingers. He wears diamond-studded earrings tonight and a silver chain around his neck, matching the hoop in his nose. And there I am next to him. Black heels, little skirt, huge diamond on my finger, pain and rage in my eyes, scars on my hands from the fights I've won. Yes, I answer honestly, shocked when I believe myself. There, that woman in the mirror looks exactly like she belongs on the arm of that man. My spine straightens just a little, and my chin lifts. Don't let that crown ever slip, Aries says, his voice low and a little rugged. My eyes meet his. How is it possible for someone to be this sincere, this intense, while also looking like he'll be the end of me? You're Lana fucking Kincaid. Don't ever let the world forget it. I'm left without words, but Aries doesn't ask for more. He pulls the door open and pulls me after him. I hadn't thought of it even once before reaching the ground floor, but I'm exceptionally relieved when, instead of heading to the parking garage and climbing onto the motorcycle, we walk out in front of the building, and the black SUV is waiting for us, Billings at the wheel. Aries pulls the door open for me. I climb inside, settling into the plush seat. Aries climbs in after me and pulls the door shut. With ease, the driver merges into the traffic. What are you doing interviews for? I ask, when the thought crosses my mind. Aries sits with his hands resting on his knees, and I'm trying to get a read if he's relaxed. His pose certainly should look it, but he rubs his palm over his pants twice. almost a sign of nervousness. "Things are about to get busy," he says calmly. He scans the darkening evening, his brows furrowed slightly at the remaining light in the sky. "Stepping back into Augustus's world is going to take up a lot of my time. I'm going to need someone to help manage my own properties." "An assistant?" I question, and it's totally wrong of me that I bristle at the idea of him hiring a female assistant. Aries shakes his head. "They need to be a lot more than that. I need someone smart, savvy, someone who thinks like I do." I haven't quite figured out what that is yet. I swear the man is a walking contradiction sometimes. It takes me a minute to register where we are as the car slows. Riverside Drive. Wealth. So much damn wealth tied to Aries' hunt. I'm expecting something spectacular, but my imagination is far too simple, I realize, as the driver pulls over and up to the curb. There aren't many freestanding homes left in Manhattan, but that's exactly what this is. I blink 3 times when I climb out, taking it in. It looks like a castle. While most everything in this city gets dirty and is nearly impossible to keep clean, the white exterior of this house is pristine and fresh. I don't know architecture, but this looks like a cross between Gothic and Greek to me. It rises 6 stories high, dozens of windows dotting the exterior, and there's so much detail carved into each feature. There are only 2 occupied freestanding homes left in Manhattan, Aries says as he places a hand at the small of my back. The Hunt House is one of them. There, above the front door, I see a stone accent, and those exact words are carved into it. Hunt House. The line below it reads, "Established 1907. Your family built this house?" I gape in awe. "And has owned it the whole time?" "It's never left the family," Aries confirms as he steers us to the front door. I kind of expect some fancy butler to appear, but Aries just enters a code at the door and pushes it open. Oh, I like this place. The entryway is its own massive room. Black and white checkered tile crosses the floor, and the walls are painted a color so dark I can't tell if they're black, blue, or green. Beautiful picture frame molding is precisely placed everywhere. A crazy modern chandelier dominates the space overhead, and a glorious staircase leads out of the room, the walls transitioning into a brilliant, stark white as they ascend. Movement from the right pulls my eyes, and I look over to see a woman standing from a grand desk. I'd guess this was a formal parlor, somewhere intended to entertain company, but it's obviously a personal office right now. The woman has gorgeous curves. It's hard not to notice that right away. As she walks around the desk, I realize she's fairly short, definitely several inches shorter than I am. Her features are calm, composed. She sports short, choppy hair that looks like it probably cost a fortune. It's a warm blonde color, but the purposeful dark roots are a giveaway that her natural hair color is closer to Aries. "So glad you could make it," she says with a warm smile. "I'll admit, I've been anxious for this moment since Aries told me his plan a few days ago." A few days ago? Aries and I only met a few days ago. She pulls Aries into a hug, and the difference between them is almost comical. Their size, their appearance, their entire demeanors are wildly different. "I've been dying to meet you, Lana," she says as she releases Aries and turns toward me. Her expression, her tone are still warm, but she extends a hand. I'm actually a little relieved she didn't come at me with a hug. I've never been much of a hugger. Maybe that's the effect of growing up with a father who was a boxer and always being around fighting. "Lana, my sister Florence," Aries introduces unnecessarily. I shake her hand. "It's really nice to meet you," I say honestly. Everything about the woman is elegance and class, but there's something undeniably warm and comforting in her presence. "Oh, the pleasure is mine," she says as her eyes rake over me. I feel her evaluation, but not her judgment. I had to meet the woman reckless enough to walk into a vampire party knowing her best friend disappeared from there, and walk out of it pretending to be a vampire's fiancée. When she puts it like that, it sounds a little insane. Footsteps above pull my eyes to the stairs, And a moment later, a woman wearing the best cross between business and bohemian enters the foyer. "Lana, this is my wife, Clementine," Florence introduces as she wraps an arm around the woman with admiration and pride. "It's lovely to meet you," Clementine says with a London accent and a warm smile. She's significantly taller than Florence, lean and lithe. Her warm brown skin is damn near glowing, and her curly hair has me jealous. "You too, Clementine," I say as I shake her hand as well. But the strength in her grip, the way her skin feels just a tad too cool, makes my brows furrow in question. "Bitten," she offers an explanation. "Going on 3 years now." "I thought you said—" I begin to dig, but cut myself off before I can come across as rude. "Never mind. There will be plenty of time for all the questions you're dying to ask later," Florence says with a knowing smile. "Dinner should be ready. Let's eat." She turns, heading up the stairs, Clementine right behind her. Aries places a hand at the small of my back, and we follow his sister and sister-in-law. Every floor is the most gorgeous mix of class and modern. The Hunts have impeccable taste. I could spend an hour on each floor just taking in every detail, every perfectly placed art piece. This place could truly be a museum without changing much at all. But we ascend 2 stories before walking into a moody living room. Attached is a blocky, huge dining table with seating for 10, and just behind that is the most grandiose kitchen I've ever seen. Inside, there is a man moving from pan to plate, a flurry of action. I approach the table, and, like he's a true gentleman, Aries pulls out a seat for me. I sink down into it and note that Florence is watching our interactions with rapt interest. The smallest of smiles pulls on her lips as she watches her half-brother sit beside me. The moment we're seated, the servers descend. Golden platters, filled to the brim with mouth-watering dishes, are laid out before us. It's a feast that could feed a dozen, no question. My stomach growls, reminding me I haven't eaten in too long. "Someone needs to eat up," Clementine says with a smile, and I feel my face blush. I didn't think anyone would hear it, but when you're dining with 2 vampires— "Why don't you tell us about yourself, future sister-in-law?" Florence says as she dishes up her food. She says the last of it with a wink. I pile on some of the delicious-looking food and glance over to Aries. What has he told them? What haven't I told him yet that I should? Um, I say, swallowing and gathering my thoughts. I've lived in this city my whole life. I've barely even left Manhattan, if I'm being honest. And I love it here. I really can't imagine living anywhere else. "Classic New Yorker," Florence smiles, raising a glass to my words. I smile, liking this woman already. My parents split when I was just a kid, and I lived with my mom until I was a teenager. I lost her and my younger sister at the same time, and then I went to live with my dad. Beneath the table, Aries' hand comes to my thigh. I haven't told him that part yet, about Emmy. I swallow once and try to push all those thoughts away. "I'm so sorry, Lana," Florence offers with sincerity. "Losing your mother, it's indescribable if you haven't experienced it. But your sister, too?" I nod. Thankfully, my dad is great. Was great. I correct myself. Damn, this is why I don't like talking about myself. Anyway, I lived with him. He owned a training gym. I kind of followed in his footsteps. I've been a trainer for the last few years. My dad passed away a few years ago, but it's nice. I still get to work at the gym, so I feel like I still have a little part of him. "That's beautiful," Clementine says, setting her glass back on the table. I note it's filled with a thick red liquid. Blood. I try to remind Florence how lucky she is that she's surrounded by decades of ancestors in this place. Not all of us have mementos. So, Clementine has lost family too. "Well, no wonder you're brave enough to be with my brother," Florence says with an evaluative smile, one that comes out approving. "You're the toughest fucking woman in New York." I can't help the laugh that comes out, and the smile that pulls on Florence's face tells me this was her goal. Aries squeezes my thigh beneath the table again, before reaching for his cutlery and digging into his food. "That's about it for me," I say, because I don't really want to dig in deeper. What about you two? How did you meet? Florence and Clementine automatically look at each other, and the look in each of their eyes sparkles and softens at the same time. Damn, no one would question the love between the two of them. I work in pharmaceuticals. I'm sure Aries told you that, Florence says. And we do all the things you'd expect: research on treatments, chemicals, drugs. But when Aries resurrected, she looks over at her brother, studying him with a level of curiosity I've never seen so deep on another. It didn't feel real. It didn't make sense to me. This result of what? Magic? Science? Aries let me take some of his blood, and on the down low, I created a new division at the company. There are only 2 other employees in it aside from myself. We study vampirism. Shit, that's one of the coolest things I've ever heard in my life. Through Aries, we connected with other vampires, took other samples. Florence continues. So far, we've found common genetic markers, which is fascinating when considering the origins of vampirism. And the DNA, she shakes her head, a smile spreading on her lips. You wouldn't believe how incredible it truly is. There is so much more data than there should. The mad scientist is coming out. Aries cuts off his sister, looking up at her with a teasing smile. Sorry. Florence apologizes with a chuckle. I just love the science. Anyway, we were hoping to study not just the born, but the bitten as well. So Aries helped in seeking out some connections. Aries and I met at the same hospital, Clementine says, giving a soft, appreciative smile to her brother-in-law. I never exactly felt good stealing donor blood, but I didn't feel better about feeding off people either. He explained what his sister was doing and asked if I'd be willing to come talk to her. I didn't have anything to lose, so I agreed. She looks back at her wife, and it isn't too hard to figure out the rest from there. I never believed in fate before, Florence says as she looks at the woman who is her polar opposite in looks. But I have from the minute she walked through the door. I was done for. The fact that my brother was a vampire, and then the love of my life was another kind, and I was studying them, the rest was easy. Clementine lays a hand over Florence's before looking back at me. I was turned in London a year before I came to New York. My sire was this kind woman. She was just lonely. I was lucky when it came to the dead. She never took advantage of me. But she was killed by another vampire, an old flame of hers. I got scared. Didn't know if he was going to come after me as well. Since I didn't have any family left, I decided to start somewhere new. I'd always wanted to see Broadway, so New York seemed to be calling my name. Wow, I admire. Your story. I shake my head, my entire soul filled at hearing it all. It's beautiful. Thank you for sharing it with me. Way to show us up, Aries says, taunting his sister. Who doesn't love a good fake to real love story, though? She taunts him right back. The way her words make me blush. And the next hour passes easily. Light talk laced with dark humor and jabs. The dynamic between Aries and Florence makes it obvious how much they care about each other and how deeply in love Clementine and Florence are. And despite everything, I actually feel at ease here with them all. I don't feel like an outsider to so much love. They invite me right in with an open door. As the night grows later, I wander after Florence with dishes, putting them in the sink. There's staff waiting in the wings to swoop in and take care of it all. But it says something that Florence clears her own dishes. You're the perfect fit for him, she says as she leans against the counter. She folds her arms over her chest and fixes me with those penetrating eyes. I want you to know that. Aries, he's had plenty of reasons to block everyone out of his life, to guard his heart. There was that leech back in high school, and then sweet Mila. I was never sure what kind of woman would fit into his life. But you're perfect, Lana. Your toughness, yet your femininity, your no bullshit demeanor. I haven't seen the light in my brother's eyes like this, maybe ever. So thank you for putting it there, whether you meant to or not. My heart is doing gymnastics in my chest. My brows furrow as I look over my shoulder, back at Aries, who chats comfortably with Clementine. Really? I ask, completely unsure. How could someone like me ever be the perfect fit for a man like Aries Hunt? Really, Lana, Florence says, without a trace of hesitation in her tone. Don't doubt yourself for 1 second. I couldn't have dreamed up a better person for my brother if I tried. I know this is technically for show for that asshole who sired him, but if I had to pick someone for him for real, you fit the bill exactly. And without another word, leaving that massive weight on me, she turns and walks out of the kitchen. What the fuck? Aren't siblings supposed to put up a huge fuss when you tell them you're in a fake engagement? They're supposed to be worried to death about their blood, not go and give the fake fiancé a huge seal of approval. Taking 2 seconds to try and catch my breath, unsuccessfully, I turn and follow her back out to join my fiancé at the table. Chapter 9. I was already nervous for today, but as I watch Aries pace from one end of the bathroom to the other, his thumb worrying over his lower lip for the 10th time, my pulse picks up speed. Looking in the mirror, I return to my makeup. I dab on mascara, double-checking the lip color, the rose on my cheeks, the eyeshadow. I'm wearing a black dress that hugs my body. My makeup matches, smoky and dangerous looking. Silver earrings fall in a cascade that nearly reaches my shoulders. I thought Aries and I should match. Aries checks his phone, halting too abruptly to be human. He mutters something under his breath, too quiet for me to make out the words. "Are you okay?" I ask finally. "Is something wrong?" He looks up at me, and I see it all there in his eyes. He's dreading this with every bone in his body. Walking back into my father's house wasn't something I ever thought I'd do again. I kind of can't believe I'm willingly walking back into the Viper's den. Shit. Something heavy and cold drops in my stomach. Aries lets out a sigh that sounds a little more like a hiss and runs his hand through that gorgeous dark hair. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't be saying anything, Vengeance. I know how to handle Augustus. It's just kind of hitting me, the reality of taking you into his home. Him laying eyes on you. The thought of the number of women he's—" "Hey," I say, turning and stepping toward him. I cup either side of his face, bringing his gaze to mine, and my comfort level in doing it shocks me. A few days ago, I never would have so casually touched this vampire who looks like he runs the streets. And now, well, it's way too damn easy, considering it's only been 8 days since we met. I'm a big girl. I literally teach women how to protect themselves from predators, and I know Augustus isn't the same, but you're going to be there next to me, and I still can't figure out what the hell it means, but I trust you. You've got me?" And my heart hammers out an ecstatic rhythm when Aries' hands wrap around my waist, drawing me just a bit closer. "I've got you, Lana. I swear." I nod, swallowing down the feral cat wanting to stretch and nuzzle against his body. "And I've got you. I won't leave any room for him to doubt us. I can promise you that." That hungry look that ignites in Aries' eyes is starting to become familiar. He studies my eyes, then my lips, and I wonder if he's looking forward to the show later, the same as I am. I will never forget that perfect kiss atop the Rockefeller building. It's forever seared into my being, and I have no qualms about a repeat. "Thank you," he says, and runs his thumb over my lower lip. Before I can do something stupid like lean in and bite his lip like I'm dying to, when there is no reason to put on a show, I turn away and grab my things from the bathroom counter. "You're welcome," I say, sliding the strap of my purse over my shoulder. I reach out and take his hand. "Let's go meet your mafia vamp father." The black SUV is waiting for us at the curb. Billings holds the door open for us, and I climb in first, Aries' hand at my lower back. He follows in after me, and the driver shuts us inside. "I'm meeting my new manager for training on Monday morning," Aries says as we roll forward. "I'll be in the office most of the day. Would you come with me in the morning? I'd like you to meet him." Aries and I have to integrate into every part of each other's lives. The difficult part to grasp is the fact that it doesn't feel hard or like a stretch at this point. "Of course," I answer with a nod. As I look over at Aries, a thought hits me hard. Not going to lie, I'm having a really hard time picturing you in any kind of office. doing business like any other rich guy in this city. I allow the words, but my eyes scrape over Aries, and they ring true. That crooks a smile in one corner of his mouth, and I catch just a little glimpse of one of those pointed teeth. Nope, that definitely wasn't a little zing of thrill that went through me. Looks can be deceiving, Vengeance. We both know that by now. And he reaches over and takes my hand, and I can't help it when I study his own. There's a silver ring around his middle finger, a snake eating its own tail. Ouroboros. Beneath it, I note the ink. What do the runes mean? I ask, running a finger over the complicated lines on his knuckles. Aries is quiet for a moment, his gaze turning to the ink he chose to mark his body with forever. Creator of my own fate, he says softly. I got that one while I was in Portland. During the time he was separating himself from Augustus. I think it's my favorite, I say, without really thinking about the words. You've barely seen any of them, Vengeance. Aries goads with a touch of feral growl in his tone. We should probably fix that, I say, as my eyes rise up to meet his dark ones. You know, for the sake of this, our fake relationship. He holds my gaze, and I hate that the slightly cocky look in his eyes is turning me on. Uh-huh, for the sake of this. Every inch of me is set alive by electric fire. Focus, Lana, I internally try to reason. Don't forget why you're doing this. But that voice isn't very clear or loud. Just a few minutes later, the car stops at the curb. Billings climbs out and comes around to open Aries' door. I climb out after him, taking his offered hand for help. I smooth my hand over my dress when I get out at the sidewalk, and Aries slides an arm around my waist. Shit, I'm starting to like the feel of it way too much. Its size, its heat, its intimacy. A girl could get used to the touch of her fake fiancé. While the Hunt house was borderline magical, Aries' father's house is exactly fitting of the image I have in mind for the man. It's a brick building with black details, and it is covered in detail, from the stone lions to the moldings, the shutters, the arches, the balconies. The building stretches 5 stories high, and while it is attached to other buildings, it isn't obvious. And this location? I can't even imagine how one individual could ever afford it. Apparently, it fits within the budget of an immortal, borderline mafia-esque vampire. We set toward the massive black doors, but before we even reach them, a man steps out wearing a black suit and an obvious earpiece. Welcome back, Aries, he says in a deep, rumbling voice. Augustus is anxious to see you. Aries ignores the man's words completely and walks in the doors, pulling me along at his side. Just a few weeks ago, I couldn't imagine setting foot in a building like this. Now I live in one that is nearly as impressive, and my fake future sister-in-law lives in one as well and says I'm welcome over any time. The walls are painted a deep blue that complements the wood details that run underfoot and climb the walls. A modern chandelier overhead casts us in a dim glow, and straight ahead are floor-to-ceiling windows granting us the most beautiful view of the East River. Another guard is waiting for us just inside. Arms up, he simply says, looking at me with heavy, dead eyes. Excuse me? I ask doubtfully, arching an eyebrow at him. Weapons check, he says simply. Watch your hands or I'll relieve you of them. Aries snarls as he puts his arms up, and the man quickly pats him down. I fix the guard with a look of pure hatred and raise my arms. He sweeps his hands down my back, over my hips. He sweeps one hand between my breasts in a cutting motion, and Aries growls in warning. Clear, the guard says, unfazed. He steps back, taking up his position by the front door with his hands clasped at his waist. Mr. Lonan is waiting for you upstairs, the first guard says. I take a moment to look around, and it feels like such a waste. Space comes at such a premium in this city. But as I look to the left and to the right, I find nearly identical wide hallways, each with a couch in it and a large variety of artwork on the walls. Nothing else, nothing functional. This space is for receiving, for show, and nothing more. The first guard walks up the stairs, and Aries and I follow after him. I realize as Aries takes the space in, observing every detail, that he's never been here before. And then I remember Aries telling me that Augustus moves every few years, always claiming his latest real estate conquest. What would it be like to have more money than some small countries? With my hand gripped firmly in Aries, we step off on the third floor. Here, there is another guard waiting down the hall we walk. And then our guard pushes a door open, extending a hand toward it. The set of Aries' shoulders is stiff, and his grip on my hand is starting to get painful. The muscles in his jaw twitch. But his gaze is steely as he takes one breath, and then we cross the threshold together. We enter into an office, and for a moment I almost feel blind. It's so dimly lit. There is only sconce lighting, glowing dimly on the walls. And these walls are lined with bookcases, their shelves filled with books, antiques, pictures. There's even a skull right there. A window dominates the back wall, and it gives us a glittering view of the dark horizon. And in the center, a huge desk dominates the space. Before it, there are 2 chairs that look like they cost more than I make in a year. There, stepping around the desk, is a man who fits exactly as I imagined him. His eyes are dark, the exact same shade as Aries'. His hair is the same shade as well, though this man's is combed back, a look that is old and modern at the same time. But while Aries' face is clean-shaven, this man's jaw is hugged by a neatly trimmed beard. I wouldn't immediately pick them out as father and son if I didn't know, but I can see it. "My son," the man says. His tone is calm. His voice doesn't rise, but he sounds pleased, happy. He walks right up to Aries and wraps his arms around him, though it looks more like a power move than a gesture of affection. "Welcome back. It's been a minute," Aries says, his voice nearly monotone. He's using so much control right now, I'm exhausted just watching this interaction. "Father, I'd like to introduce you to my fiancée, Lana Kincaid." "Lana," the man says as he releases Aries and turns to me. His gaze drops down the length of me, and my skin crawls. From what Aries has told me, this man sleeps around. A lot. All with the intent of creating more children who will one day be vampires just like him. The man steps toward me, and I extend a hand before he can try to hug me. He smirks at my assertiveness, but takes my hand, shaking it softly, which actually creeps me the fuck out. "Augustus Lonan, it's lovely to meet you." It takes every ounce of my strength not to yank my hand away when he raises it and presses a kiss to the back of my knuckles. "You as well." "Come," Augustus says. He extends a hand to the door and walks out, turning down the hall. I cast one look at Aries, who looks about as ready to snap as I feel, but we make our way down the hall after the man who created him. Augustus leads the way into a gorgeous living room. A massive fireplace dominates the space, a white marble mantel framing the fixture. Black walls stretch high above, and the millwork detail is impressive. There isn't one chandelier, but 4 overhead. Soft leather couches frame the space, and a stupidly white rug is laid out in the middle. It looks just like the lair of a rich mafia vampire. "Forgive my curiosity," Augustus says as he takes a seat on one of the couches. He spreads his arms over the back, taking up space. He crosses one ankle over the opposite knee. "But my son hasn't given me any details about you. Simply a phone call that he was engaged and he wanted to have a meeting." "Ask away," I say, feigning confidence as Aries and I sink onto the couch opposite him. Aries stretches a hand behind me, draped casually over my shoulders. I cross my legs, and he rests his free hand on my bare knee. I lace my fingers through his. "I'll preface this conversation by letting you know that I've looked into you," Augustus says with no apologies, and my stomach drops for a moment. We've prepared for this, I silently remind myself. This is exactly why Aries and I have taken an entire week getting to know one another, briefing on what is to come. "Can't say I'm surprised," I answer. "I'm dying to know if you've found anything interesting." Augustus raises an eyebrow at that, looking slightly impressed that I'm not freaking the fuck out. "You're a surprise, Lana Kincaid. Not like most of the women in this city, but you are exactly what I might have dared envision for my son." "I'll take the compliment, but you haven't really answered my question," I state, raising my own eyebrow. The man chuckles, and I can see how it wouldn't be hard for him to convince a slew of women to sleep with him. His eyes dance when he smiles, with danger, but still, they dance. Well, you were born here in Manhattan. Your parents had a decree of divorcement when you were 5 years old, just 1 year after your sister Emmy was born. Details. The man has details that even Aries doesn't know yet. He barely knows my sister died. I haven't told him her name yet. You're nailing the basics so far, I goad, knowing I probably shouldn't. Yet I can't help it. The man screams predator, and he is exactly the kind of reason why I took my focus into teaching self-defense to women. The look in his eyes darkens as he recognizes the challenge. Your grades through elementary and middle school were exceptional. And then your mother and sister were killed. The police report. He shakes his head, and my grip on Aries' hand tightens. I hear the faintest growl rumble in his chest. His entire body tightens around me, every motion protective. Fucking brutal. Can't imagine what finding that would do to a 15-year-old. More details I've yet to share with Aries, and his grip on my knee tightens. Fuck up her grades for the rest of high school, I say coolly. I'm not letting Augustus get under my skin. He's testing me right now, and I will not let him make me fail. Bring on weekly therapy for 3 years. Give her some brutal nightmares, but you already knew this. Augustus looks at me, his eyes evaluating me and every word I say, every reaction I give. Finally, he nods. I commend you for graduating high school, though. I'm sure it wasn't easy. And your father, he must have had quite the strength of character. Losing a daughter like that. I'm sorry you lost him as well. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger, right? I say evenly, though in reality I'd like to give this man a quick punch to the throat, a ball-crushing kick to the junk, lay him out face down, and make him bleed all over his white rug. A woman walks into the room holding a tray of hors d'oeuvres. She sets them on the coffee table in the center of the room, and then reality starts closing in, the literal fact of what these men in this room are. She walks straight to Augustus and offers him her arm. You're a gem, Heather, he says with a soft smile. He takes her hand, drawing her closer, and I get half a second view of his fangs lengthening and black veins sprouting from his suddenly glowing red eyes. Those fangs disappear into her wrist, and Heather goes eerily still. The look in her eyes goes out of focus, exactly like I saw at that party where this all began. Augustus takes 8 long pulls, and then he licks over the spot where he bit her, sparing me from having to see any blood. Son, Augustus offers, literally holding the woman's arm in Aries' direction. I'm good, Aries says, his tone hard and cold. Thank you, Heather, Augustus says, looking up at the woman as she slowly comes back to herself. Would you send in some white wine, perhaps? I don't drink, I pipe up, because there's not a chance in hell I'm going to let my inhibitions be hindered around this man. HealthNet, remember? The benefits do not outweigh the cons for it to hold any interest to me. Fair enough, he says, dismissing the poor woman. You have rave reviews online for your instruction. I nod. I'm aware I have a great reputation. Yet what I can't find any trace of is your relationship with my son, Augustus says, his eyes darkening. Have you ever been in love, Mr. Lonan? I ask, narrowing my eyes at him slightly, leaning forward in my seat. Aries' grip on my hand tightens slightly, maybe a warning not to push this man too far. Love is relative, he says, giving me that little smile that makes me want to hurt him. I've loved many, many women in many, many levels of variance. I shake my head. Have you ever had that magnetic pull to a person? Have you ever wanted to keep them a secret? Keep them all to yourself, so you don't have to share an ounce of what you have with the public? Have you ever had them wrap themselves around your soul, altering it into a new version of yourself that you never knew you wanted? Augustus studies me with every word I speak, serious, dark, contemplative. He watches me, his gaze studying every bit of my body language. But he doesn't answer me, which gives me my answer. When you've been fucked over by the world too many times in your life, you don't really give a damn to invite it into your new perfect world. I'm happy to keep Aries to myself until the end of fucking days. Aries' hand tightens around mine again, and I swear the heat rising off of him has risen a few degrees. Guess I can be a good actress when needed. It helps that all this vile energy is surging through me sitting in the presence of this man. You should know better than anyone that I'm careful not to leave a footprint online, Aries says, speaking up for the first time in so long. Lana and I started talking online. A dark, bitter soul knows another dark, bitter soul. Lana doesn't trust anyone, and I know what this world is like, so we didn't meet in person for 6 months. But the moment I laid eyes on her in the real world, his eyes lock on mine, and the look in them deepens. In them I see possession, claiming, hunger, desire. I might be on my A game right now with this show, but Aries still puts me to shame. I knew I was going to ask her to marry me right then and there, but I figured I'd better wait a few weeks so she wouldn't run, he continues, studying every inch of my face. The way his words hit me right in the core, I should be embarrassed, but it all lined up perfectly. I smile, caressing a hand to his cheek, and it's a problem that my body can't lie. Electricity races through every pathway in my body. Congratulations, Augustus says darkly. My contentment pops at his voice. I look back over at him to find his gaze darkened, and something very close to a disgusted sneer is on his lips. You look very happy. Look, that word makes me nervous. What if Aries and I aren't as good as I think we are at selling this? Have you set a date? Augustus asks, and my face goes cold. We haven't discussed that. We're thinking May next year. Aries lies smoothly. At least one of us is good on the spot, but we haven't nailed it down yet. There are a few things to factor in. Which are, Augustus encourages, sounding slightly bored and annoyed. Considering what drove us apart before, I thought you and I could talk things through, now that I've found my match, Aries says, steering the conversation expertly. We're hoping for a positive pregnancy test any day. Augustus's eyebrows raise at that, and finally, he looks happy. So, Aries says, cutting him off from saying anything else, I thought it high time we smoothed things out. I've got some ideas for the company I'd really like to discuss. A slow smile pulls on Augustus's lips, and my heart picks up pace. We've done it. I see it written all over his face. Aries is back in. Then let's talk business, Augustus says. He rises to his feet, smoothing his sports jacket. Lana, you're free to explore the mansion. It's a historical treasure that should be appreciated. The rest of the night is between me and my son, the message comes across as clear as day. Aries leans over and presses a kiss to my temple. I offer him a tiny smile as he stands, watching the gorgeous view as he walks away with his father, back toward the office. I lean forward and take one of the hors d'oeuvres left on the coffee table. Of course, it's one of the best tasting things I've ever put in my mouth. I can only imagine how much Augustus pays his cook. I take another, knowing I'm killing a bit of time. Even though Augustus gave me the invitation to look around the mansion, I don't need to look suspicious by immediately looking through every drawer and under every surface for hidden door buttons. Aries was at the Red Party because he wanted to figure out why his father was hosting and holding the parties. Augustus is in real estate. He's not an entertainer. He's not trying to draw in clients by hosting parties where vampires feed on humans who, for the most part, don't know what the purpose of the Red Parties is. Aries wanted to know why his father was doing this, and my best friend had disappeared after attending one of those Red Parties. I climbed to my feet and circled the living room, looking over every surface, every nook, every doorway. Do I expect Augustus is hiding Ophelia in some dark corner of his home? No. This man is smart, conniving even. The feeling of darkness that comes right off the man is enough to set my teeth on edge. But there's no way he'd be so lazy as to take someone to his own home. All this operating under the assumption Ophelia is even still alive. I don't know what sick shit Augustus or his people are into, but I'm going to hold out hope that Ophelia is fine until I see evidence to the contrary. I wander into a grand dining room that even puts the one at Hunt House to shame. There's a table that could host an entire boardroom of people. The detail work in the ceiling and rising the wall is dizzying. It's nearly like a modern cathedral in here. Along the walls, there are paintings, photographs of old buildings around Manhattan, and there's even a set of swords on display. Beyond the dining room, I find a kitchen. But with the chef and his assistant busy at work preparing our dinner, I don't get the chance to explore the place. Not much lost. It looks like a commercial kitchen, a beautiful one, but still sterile. Down the hall, beyond Augustus's office, is a guest bedroom with an attached bathroom. Beyond screaming wealth, there's nothing of note. So I take the stairs, rising up another floor. Here I find 4 other bedrooms. All of them look completely unoccupied. They look almost exactly like the one on the floor below, and I find no evidence of secret spaces or hidden doors. Again, not that I'm truly expecting to, but these are actual damn vampires I'm dealing with. At the very end of the hall, I find the last bedroom, and I might not have the keen sense of smell Aries does, but even I can detect the scent of Augustus in here, like money and coal and pine. Looking over my shoulder, I find the floor still empty. I step inside. The bed is made. The carpet has recently been vacuumed. The housekeeper has rid every surface of dust. His nightstand is free of any clutter, and even though I'm dying to look through it, I'm not that stupid. We have to play this carefully, and if I go jumping in too suspiciously, it will blow everything. The only thing of note is that on one of the bookcases, there is a line of 9 picture frames. Aries occupies the first, a picture of him when he was just a teenager. I smile as I walk up to it. He looks so much younger, and so much more innocent. His neck is completely free of tattoos, and while his ears are already pierced, the hoop in his nose is missing. But there's something different about his eyes. They seem heavier, darker. I remember that this would be the time when Augustus was training Aries to be part of the company, when he was grooming Aries to be his predecessor, his little clone. And I realize the miracle is that Aries is the man he is, instead of just a younger version of his father. My eyes slide over to the next frame, and I see another boy, one who looks to be about 16 years old. He shares similar features to Aries, but his hair is much lighter, his eyes blue instead of hazel. Beside the boy, there is a picture of a girl who looks around 13, another girl after her, maybe 12 or so. 5 boys, 4 girls. Cold goosebumps flash over my skin when I realize these are all Augustus's children, and Aries and I are pretending to be trying for a baby, a child to add to this sick brood of power and influence on the city. Augustus is trying to increase the vampire population in the city to build sway. To what end? The thought makes me shiver. I turn and find nothing else of note in Augustus's room. I wander back out to the stairs. I ascend them to a door that lets out onto a gorgeous rooftop deck, and wonder and beauty prickle along my skin. The view over the river is beautiful. Lights dance and sparkle in the dark. Behind me, the city rises to overwhelmingly tall heights. There are so many recognizable monuments. Twinkle lights are strung along the railing. Centered in the massive space is a dining table that's surprisingly intimate and cozy, with seating for only 6. But I wander to the 2 seats set up near the railing, looking out over the river. I rub my hands over my arms, chilled in the mid-June air, considering my dress is sleeveless. Where are you, Ophelia? I silently wonder as I stare out at the darkness. Shit, I hope she's okay. I pray she's alive. After my mother and sister were killed, my whole life became really small. I had to keep it simple, because no one understood. I was just the sad girl with a sad story, so I didn't have many friends. No one could carry the weight that was Lana Kincaid's reality, and I didn't blame them, but it left me lonely. But then there was Ophelia. I recognized something in her eyes when she walked into my self-defense class that evening, 18 months ago. She'd been through something dark and heavy, too. She was angry like I was. She was cold like I was. And she didn't give a damn if people didn't like her, just like me. After class, I asked her if she wanted to go out for pasta. We'd talked for 3 hours that night, laughing, getting angry, talking shit. And it was the first time I'd shared a genuine connection with someone who wasn't my own blood. It would have been kind of nice if we were gay. Loving Ophelia was instant, but I'd never been into women, And though Ophelia admitted she'd experimented, she preferred men when it came to romance. She became the most important person in the world to me. And then, 5 weeks ago, nothing. Not a word, not a text, not a trace of where she'd gone. I'm going to find you, I silently promise her. My head jerks toward the door when I hear a slight squeal. Augustus emerges first, followed by Aries. I try to read his expression to gauge the conversation they've just had, but Aries' face is carefully composed, as neutral as it could get. He crosses to where I sit and leans over me, and there's that heat in his eyes as he slides his hand around the front of my throat, tipping my head up. He kisses me upside down. Heat sears me where his hand caresses me softly. The breath is lost in my lungs as his mouth molds to mine, and I melt when his tongue asks for permission to enter. And I grant it. He invades my mouth just slightly, teasing, tempting. I answer him with vigor that has very little to do with Augustus watching. Every drop of blood in my body screams for Aries, and my body acts without permission. My brain would grant it anyway. And shit, I know I'm in trouble, because this is supposed to be fake. But the way I like this, the way I react, the way I fantasize about these moments, none of it feels fake. Aries backs away just slightly, running his thumb over the side of my throat. Fuck, he tastes like nirvana. Buried 6 feet deep, here lies Lana's soul, snatched from her chest on the 14th of June by a man with tattooed hands and chaos in his eyes. Dinner is served. Another voice calls from the center of the deck. I glance over to see the chef and the assistant setting numerous dishes on the table. Aries takes my hand, holding my eyes with something that looks a bit like a question, but he leads me to that table, pulling my chair out for me as I sit. I don't wish to put pressure on you, Lana, Augustus says as he begins dishing his food. But as a part of this company, Aries will be expected at a number of events. It certainly leaves the right impression if his fiancée is in attendance with him. I've seen the way other women look at my future husband, I say as I accept the glass Aries pours for me. I fully admit that I am the jealous type, so if he's going to be where others can lay eyes on him, I'll be there too. Rest assured, Mr. Lonan. Beneath the table, Aries' hand comes to my thigh, smoothing it over my skin in a way that sends a shock straight to the core of my feminine body. Augustus's eyes fix on where Aries' hand disappears under the table, and I think for the first time we've caught him at a loss for words. At least you seem to be able to hold your own, he finally says, taking a drink from his own glass. Dinner passes with very little real conversation, mentions of the work to come for Aries, comments about our future children, thinly veiled digs at my humble beginnings, but it's nothing I can't handle. Finally, at the end of the meal, I lay my napkin on the table. I need to use the restroom. Then my son can help clear the table with me, Augustus says, standing and beginning to stack the plates, much to my surprise. I simply give a nod and catch Aries' eyes for a moment. He's every bit on guard as he was earlier, but he tips his chin up at me, and I cross to the door. I find the only publicly accessible bathroom on the top floor. I take care of business, wash my hands, and observe myself in the mirror. I'm pretty damn proud of myself for holding up the way I have. I'm facing down a damn vampire, one who is most definitely involved in shady things. One his own son described as borderline mafia status. And that determination in my eyes is one of my greatest accomplishments in life. Just a few more minutes, I internally tell myself. I twist open the doorknob, but before I can step out, Augustus fills the doorframe. He takes a step forward, forcing me to take a step back. With his dark eyes fixed on me, he crosses the threshold and pulls the door to the bathroom closed behind him, locking it. What? You're an impressive woman, Lana Kincaid. He cuts me off, his gaze absolutely focused. He's studying my face, memorizing every line and plane. I've been pushing you the entire night, and you haven't tripped once. He takes a step forward, and I take a matching one back. My son is impressive in his own right, Augustus says, looking me over like a predator. But you need to understand the difference between rich and wealthy. The financial difference between my son and myself is vast. The power and influence we hold on this city isn't even a comparison. Why are you saying these things, Mr. Lonan? I ask. My throat feels tight. Sweat breaks out over my skin. Any normal man and I'd be confident I could fend him off, enough to get myself out of this tight situation. But Augustus is a damn vampire. He could take me straight to the floor, pin me down, do whatever he wants to me. Or he could just sink his fangs into my neck and drain me dry. Dead. No more Lana. Because I want to make you a different kind of proposal, Lana, Augustus says. He takes another step forward, and finally I run out of space. With a step backward, my ass hits the edge of the counter. I have no interest in marriage like my son, but bear me another child, and I will set you up for the rest of your mortal life. Here, in this house, preferably, but anywhere you like, so long as you show up to those events I mentioned and stay on my arm. Spit that venom you're so good at. I can make you a very comfortable woman, Lana. My mouth opens, but no words come out. The fuck? Augustus wants me to bear him a child? In exchange for being, what? His kept girlfriend? His incubator put up in a shiny tower? I might be at a physical disadvantage here, but I'd bet there's one aspect where a vampire shares weakness with a human man. My hand darts forward, and through his pants, I fist Augustus's balls, giving them a vice-like squeeze and twist. He lets out a wheeze and caves forward, catching himself with a flung-out hand on the counter. That would be a fuck no, I say through clenched teeth. And you look at me like that again? You proposition me once more. You insult your son like this ever again. And I'll make sure you never make another single heir. For good measure, I squeeze harder, letting my fingernails dig into his tender flesh. I shove past him, leaving him hunched over at the counter, unlock the door, and step out into the hall. Just then, Aries walks up the stairs, on his way to get another load of dishes. It's time to go, darling, I say, catching his hand and turning him as I head down the stairs. Aries' brow furrows at me for a second, and he casts a look over his shoulder, but Augustus, clutching his genitals in pain, is just out of his sight. He lets me drag him down the stairs and doesn't say a word as we walk out the front door. There, the black SUV awaits, Billings in the driver's seat. He scrambles out, opening the door for the two of us. What happened? Aries asks the moment we're seated and pull out onto the road. I grip my teeth, shaking my head as I look out at the dark night. Your father tried to proposition me, I say without looking at him. Asked me to be his arm candy, give him another child, said he'd make me very comfortable in exchange. Shit, Aries growls, his hand going to the handle of the door, every muscle in his body coiling. My hand flies out, laying it on Aries' arm. Don't, I say firmly. It was slimy, but I took care of it. Aries' dark eyes slide back over to meet mine. Took care of it. You're capable, Lana, but Augustus is... Vampire men have the same weak spot as human men. I cut him off, a smirk curling my lips. You? Aries struggles for words. Damn. A chuckle rumbles in his chest, and in the dark, his teeth glow white as snow as the second smile I've ever seen takes over his face. I couldn't have dreamed you up more perfect if I tried, Vengeance.